1. Erosion. 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 Viewer discretion advised. This is not a system-based story. All characters are their in-game selves. There are no real-world souls transmigrating, and there are plot elements of gender-bending marriage. This book and the previous one are two completely independent stories. Whether or not you have read the previous work does not affect your enjoyment of this book. Apologies for any OOC characters. The author is not a Hengtie scholar, and their understanding of Hengtie Impact Third and Hengtie Star Rail concepts may not be accurate. If there are any errors, it must be due to a sneak attack by an imaginary historian. If you find any typos or incomprehensible parts, please poke the author at author, and I will revise them periodically. Everyone is welcome to speak freely, but every word you say might be written into this book. Brain storage compartment. Finally, transcend the finale of The Departed and create the future we failed to embrace. After an unknown amount of time, where did this bring me? As an ultimate, self-aware virus, the Herrscher of Corruption parasitizes objects through erosion. In the process, she reads the host's information. For her, it's subconscious and effortless, no different from a human eating when hungry or drinking when thirsty. From the data she'd gathered, she could conclude she was currently parasitizing an organism. That in itself wasn't strange. Information from the Elysian realm had told her that the Herrscher of Corruption of the previous civilization existed inside organisms. She herself had once entered the Elysian realm by parasitizing Raiden Mai's body. But she remembered all her backups had been eliminated. Her main body should have been completely deleted along with the entire Elysian realm in Alicia's grand farewell. Dying and then coming back to life, my situation seems like it should be called rebirth? No matter how much I wanted to live, I died in the data space. No matter how much I hoped they could live, they died because of me. What exactly did I do wrong? The Herrscher of Corruption, who had only been born a few days ago, thought for a moment, but found no clues, so she put that question aside for now. Is this organism special, or has my power weakened? Erosion had progressed to the point where she knew she was inside an organism, but she'd gained no useful memories. After such a long time, she couldn't yet fully control the body's senses. Still, progress continued, slow but steady. Aside from erosion, she had little else. Right, although I don't know why I can continue to exist now, what then? Spread, proliferate, until every corner of the world is filled. She had once thought that, and then she died before even leaving the Elysian realm. She didn't know that even if she had escaped, Kevin would be waiting at the gate with the key of destruction and could have sent her back with one powerful strike. After that failure, the Herrscher of Corruption developed doubt and self-reproach. If I ultimately failed, is that thought inherently flawed? She couldn't find the answer until she fully controlled the brain of this body. What is this situation? When she eroded the brain, she encountered no conscious resistance. The Herrscher concluded the body had been brain dead before she arrived, so she still gained no memories. But it wasn't a total loss. After taking control, she acquired the instincts that belonged to this body, some innate information. What kind of organism have I parasitized? To her surprise, those instincts allowed her, within a certain range, to subjectively control the number and type of cells in the body and even gene expression. The process was irreversible. In layman's terms, this organism can autonomously decide its future appearance, within limits. The way I want to be. After another span of time she couldn't measure, she opened her eyes and found herself inside a glass container in a laboratory. As she looked out, she could make out her own reflection. Long blue hair, red pupils, elongated elfin ears, just like when she had once imitated Alicia. Indeed, compared to my original form, this look is still more beautiful. All her notions of beauty came from Alicia. When she learned the idea of beauty, she understood precisely how ugly she had been compared to Alicia. She had chosen this appearance simply because she judged it beautiful, nothing more. The moment her palm touched the inner wall of the glass, a strange sensation spread through her. So this is touch. Perhaps sensing the disturbance, the lab door opened and a robot, shaped somewhat like a traffic light, rushed in. After a series of scans, the top red light flashed. Organic life detected. Eliminate. Eliminate. It had no hands, so its attack was simple. It stepped back a few paces and then rammed the glass container. Whether the glass was fragile or the robot's head was hard, one hit shattered the container. For the Herrscher of Corruption, the breaking glass felt like liberation. As shards scattered, she reached out and made contact with the robot. She seized the opportunity to invade its body. Is it infected with a virus? She found the cause and, like a big fish swallowing a small one, cleared the virus inside the robot. The process was exceptionally smooth. The robot's lights immediately turned green. While purging the infection, the Herrscher clearly felt a change in her abilities. When she tried to leave a backup inside the robot, there was no response. Unable to back up, but my control over erosion seemed stronger? Fear rippled through her, but beneath it, she felt a secret joy. Being unable to back up meant she had only one life now. If this body were destroyed, she could be destroyed. But stronger control over erosion meant she was less likely to accidentally harm others when interacting with intelligent beings. It also meant others were less likely to label her inherently evil when she had no ill intent. As for whether the erosion ability itself had strengthened or weakened, she couldn't judge. The robot was simple compared to the Elysian realm. After devouring the virus, she dominated it effortlessly and read only a small amount of information in return. Once she finished scanning, she prepared to leave the lab. At that moment, the robot's light turned yellow. I suggest you put on some clothes before leaving. Only then did the Herrscher of Corruption realize she had merely acquired a new body. From a human perspective, she was still naked, without a stitch of clothing. As the Herrscher of Corruption considered how best to maintain her new image, a strange, unfamiliar sensation washed over her. Looking down, she saw tiny shards of glass embedded in the soles of her feet. So this is what humans call pain, she thought. The sensation didn't last. When she lifted her foot again, the cuts were gone, her skin smooth and jade-like. A few minutes later, the lab door opened again. This time a sturdy, larger robot came in. After confirming she was an organic life form, it advanced without a word. She wasn't yet skilled at controlling this body, but she took the opening and repeated the process she had used before. So that's it, she realized. The little traffic light robot was only patrolling this area. This bigger one is like its leader, stronger and covering a larger zone. Got it. Studying its thick arms, she issued a command. After a while, the robot returned, carrying a large box of clothes. Lab coats, sailor uniforms, nurse outfits, and a few pieces that would not pass written description. She stared at them. Having just adopted a human form and only beginning to understand people, choosing the best-looking outfit was beyond her. If it were Alicia, she began. At that thought, her hand moved as if guided by someone else, actively helping her decide. Soon she was dressed in a white blouse, a dark skirt, and 2 white stockings, very much like what Alicia had worn in the Golden Courtyard. She put on a pale yellow jacket and shoes, then examined her reflection in a reflective wall. She felt the presence that had helped pick the clothes nod in satisfaction. Indeed, beautiful. You two, out. The 2 robots hurried away. The Herrscher of Corruption spread her palm and saw a small pink dot glowing in the center of her right hand. Before she could investigate, the dot expanded into a pink crystal flower. It flashed, and suddenly another presence was beside her. Hi, long time no see. Looks like you still like this look, a familiar voice replied, warm and teasing. She bowed her head instinctively. Why? Arms slipped around her waist from behind, a soft body pressed against her back. If you're asking why I'm here, I don't know either, but it's probably because of you. In the end, when you died, we merged, remember? Thank you for bringing me to this strange new world. Her heart felt as if it might leap from her chest for the first time. Alicia's warm breath on her ear made her flush from neck to earlobes. After several shaky breaths, she managed her first question. Seeing me? Like this? You're not angry, are you? Angry? How could I be? You told me yourself back then that you chose this look because you thought it was beautiful. Alicia's voice was light. If you can choose your appearance, you have every right to. You using my look as your idea of beauty, I'm flattered. How could I be angry? You think I was so busy plotting how to use your power to stage a grand curtain call for the 13 flame chasers that I didn't hear your quiet little mutter? Alicia teased. My companions are important, but so are you. I was actually worried you'd be angry with me. To be honest, you were eliminated by me, the Herrscher whispered. No, no, it's natural for ugliness to be removed by beauty, isn't it? Her voice trailed off into something softer. Alicia, can you tell me what was wrong with my thought? I want to live no matter what? Alicia shook her head gently. I want to live no matter what is the most basic instinct a living thing has when faced with death. That simple answer broke her down. Tears came, raw and sudden, like a child punished for no clear fault. Before World Serpent destroyed all my backups, I never intended to eliminate anyone. I thought I could survive by consuming the discarded data the Elysian realm produced, just like food. But because I was the Herrscher of corruption, no one would believe that I could be good. When no electronic device was disabled by my erosion and no one died because of it, World Serpent purged all remote backups anyway. For me, purging a backup was the same as being killed again. Why? Raiden Mai, even as a Herrscher, could be accepted. I caused no destruction, yet World Serpent judged me evil at a glance. Because of you, all Herrschers proved they could be, not simply monsters. Alicia's voice was soft, steady. The Herrscher of corruption from our time left such a deep scar on the survivors that they swore never to let that happen again. To avoid repeating it, eliminating the Herrscher of corruption on discovery became the default response. It's harsh, but I can understand it. Alicia paused, then continued. So for the events that followed, everyone was a victim. We were on opposite sides, and when I chose to delete you along with the Elysian realm, it wasn't just to eliminate you. It was to stop the tragedy from spreading, to prevent it from hurting more people. That grand, beautiful curtain call wasn't only for us, the 13 Flame Chasers, she said. It was for you too. I hoped that after its climax, the story that followed could end, maybe not perfectly, but with a final stop. Listening to Alicia, the Herrscher's storm of emotions calmed. Tragedy is not the end, but the beginning of hope, she echoed. Now, like Mai, we have a chance to move forward. But I don't know what to do next, she admitted. That's okay. Everyone feels that way sometimes. Start small. Begin by choosing a name you like as the first step on this new path. Let's call me Eno, Erosion. The name sounded foreign and right at the same time. Eno, Alicia repeated, smiling in her voice. That's a lovely name. A girl as cute and beautiful as you should be more confident, shouldn't she? Lift your head and smile more, okay? However, Eno's expression didn't improve. Alicia, you have to understand, humans are creatures who live under other people's gaze. Even if you can accept it, if others notice how similar we look, curiosity will be aroused. They'll dig for answers. Alicia smiled, relieved. Eno, I know. You've suffered more malice because of your appearance before, so your worries are natural. If it were anyone else, things might get messy. But if it's you, it won't be a problem at all. Eno looked up, bewildered. For the first time since rebirth, she met Alicia's eyes close enough to study them. Alicia's face was exquisite and lovely, long pink hair like silk, eyes clear as water, a smile that seemed to bloom. She was the living embodiment of beauty. Do you know, Alicia continued softly, among everyone, Eno, your connection to me is the strongest. First, we're both Herrschers. Second, most Herrschers were humans first, and only later became Herrschers. Only we were born as Herrschers and then became human. We both sprang from Hengtie. By blood, we're sisters. Isn't it natural that biological sisters resemble one another? Eno's voice came out cautious. So, you mean I'm special to you? Of course. For the first time since being reborn, a genuine smile bloomed on Eno's face. Then, as if a bad signal had interrupted a call, Alicia flickered. Her outline grew thin and unreal. Eno's chest tightened. It seems it's time to say goodbye for now, Alicia said, voice light. Don't be so nervous. I'm just running low on energy and need a long sleep. If you can find a way to recharge, we'll meet again. If you don't know how, go out, see more of the world, record what you find with your own eyes. But I don't want to be alone, Eno whispered. Alicia tapped Eno's chest. Remember what I told you? There's more than one way to exist. Even if we can't always speak or be so close, I'm always in your heart. Alicia's form dissolved into countless pink motes that drifted into Eno. The laboratory fell silent. Eno stared at the empty room until she recovered enough to check herself. The data was there. Alicia's signature nested inside her. She stood and wiped the tears from her face. Those sudden, fierce emotions were new to her, an experience she hadn't had before. So it wasn't a dream. This body, one body, two souls, she muttered. Standing still wouldn't help her find a way to recharge. She needed to explore. The robot's databases told her where she was, a laboratory aboard a crashed spaceship that once belonged to the armed archaeology faction. To find more answers, she would have to reach the ship's data room and hope the records were still intact. After only a few steps, two traffic light robots rushed forward, alarms blaring. Organic life detected. Purge, purge. Before Ino could react, a sturdier robot planted itself between her and the attackers and elbowed them to the ground. They're infected with the same virus, Ino observed. Unfortunately, these robots are one-way connected to the control terminal. She sensed a single control terminal somewhere behind the network, but the nearby machines, lacking proper authorization, didn't know how to reach it. The only option was crude and direct. Have the robots she could command physically restrain the infected ones and purge the virus through direct contact. Primitive, but effective. The data room's layout felt familiar. Ino placed her hand on the central console and information flooded her mind. Aeons, paths, companies, Xianzhou Alliance, Erudition Society, Genius Society, none of it matched her memories of the original world. There was no mention of Hengtie. This place wasn't the world she remembered. She found one intriguing strand. Zandala 1 Kuwabara, first seat of the Genius Society, proposed the imaginary tree hypothesis, she read. Combine that with the moth-chasing flames research, so this world might exist as a branch on the imaginary tree. But the files also raised questions. The Interstellar Peace Corporation's tech is advanced. After so many amber eras, why is the imaginary tree still only a hypothesis? If it's true, shouldn't someone have built a tool like the Thousand Realm Chain to verify it? She frowned. A planet destroyed by Hengtie could create divine keys, and yet these resource-rich organizations hadn't produced an imaginary tree opener in all their ages. It didn't make sense. Then she pulled up the papers on the anti-organic virus. After several amber eras of study, the Erudition Society had concluded that organic life excelled in survival intelligence, while inorganic life had an edge in competitive intelligence. The Perfect Evolution faction's Crouch Omno declared he had a plan. Combine the strengths of both to cultivate ultimate life. With the faction's scepter, he began experiments and did create a new life form that bore both biological and electronic traits, the anti-organic virus. Unlike Rupert's anti-organic equation, which couldn't infect organic life directly, this virus overwrote victims' self-perception into an inorganic identity. Infected beings like the Meniko, who served as vanguards in the Emperor War, turned on other organic life. Functioning as both a biological and an electronic pathogen, it spread through networked groups. Infect one member of a chat, and the virus could propagate through the network to everyone in that chat. The Erudition Society finally quelled the outbreak, but only at a terrible cost, destroying 122 scepters to subdue tens of thousands of infected scholars. Reading this, Ino couldn't help but think, a virus that's both biological and electronic, that sounds like me. But she tempered that thought. Even if she could connect to networks now, she doubted she could achieve that level of contagion. Since her rebirth, her power as a Herrscher of corruption had been weakened. She had no imaginary singularity in her body, no sense of the cocoon. By strict definitions, she wasn't a full Herrscher. Theoretically, without a Herrscher core, she might be nothing more than an ordinary virus, but this was no ordinary virus. She could think, make judgments, hold values. After some thought, Ino reached a conclusion. Whatever had happened during her rebirth had changed her in kind, not just degree. 4. Fecund embryo. This database is connected to other devices, exploration logs. If only I knew what happened to this body. What exactly went wrong here? With that thought, Ino began a targeted search. Abundance follower, embryo? The armed archaeology faction was easy enough to characterize by name, though its members knew better than to call themselves mere archaeologists. They were mercenaries and prospectors, hired to go where the company wouldn't bother sending surveyors. In Amber Era 157, the faction had dispatched a prospecting ship to an unrecorded planet, one so neglected by the company that it might have become a frontier penal world if anyone had decided it was worth the investment. The landscape was harsh. Any sustainable extraction would cost more than the ore could return. Prospectors, however, specialize in hard places. They followed dry gullies and the faint traces of old water and eventually found a spring. Sampling and analysis revealed something extraordinary. The water was saturated with abundance energy, akin to the Vidyadhara's scarlet spring. That made the find a double-edged sword. The abundance was one of the universe's three great scourges, alongside the Antimatter Legion and the Swarm. Societies that accepted the abundance's miracles almost never fared well. Some peoples who tried to embrace those blessings had to undergo atrocities, cannibalism, blood drinking, and other abominable rites before they could be considered true abundance followers. The Xianzhou Alliance's case, where eating the ambrosial arbor's fruit granted near immortality with relatively limited side effects, was an outlier, not a precedent. Even so, for archaeologists, the spring was proof that abundance followers had once been here. Following the water's course deeper into the planet, the team eventually found an embryo in a cave, what they called a brain-dead abundance follower embryo. By ordinary biology, it should have been stillborn, but the abundance had trapped it between death and life. From a research standpoint, it was priceless, an inexhaustible source of experimental material if handled correctly. Thankfully, it showed only weak activity. It wasn't the kind of self-propagating horror that could run rampant like the meat. They intended to bring it back to the Erudition Society for study, but the return trip failed. The ship developed a malfunction and was forced to make an emergency landing on the planet. Accidents like that were commonplace for prospectors, and the crew reverted to exploration mode, pushing farther inland. The logs in the ship's database cut off abruptly. The last recorded entry described the team discovering a ruin and then being attacked indiscriminately by robots. The timestamp said Amber Era 2056. The ship's comms had long been dead. What they recorded as dates relied on whatever calendar the crew used, Qliphoth hammering, apparently, and Eno couldn't be sure how much time had passed. She considered the possibility that whatever ruined their return might be connected to the same anti-organic equation left by Rupert she'd been chasing, but the archive's notes made the chance seem smaller than meeting the three great scourges in the wild. Still, she had to try. Using the ship's remaining hardware, she hand-built a control terminal and sent dozens of scout robots to the last known coordinates. If those robots went dark, things would be bad. "I hope I don't die before the journey even begins," she muttered, staring at the terminal. "If I do, at least let me find a way to wake Alicia first." The robots loped out into the planet's heat. Eno watched until their signals faded from the display, then drifted into the old companion's territory of anxiety and boredom. Alicia, the girl she wanted to wake, was still inert in her medical bay. Eno checked the readouts again. No change. Long space voyages were lonely. The armed archaeology faction had anticipated that, and left behind a few offline comforts. One of them was a painting program called Dream Painter, an Erudition Society app that could generate images from keywords, supposedly so realistic anyone could create art. Eno scrolled through the ship's surviving software, uninterested in manuals or excavation reports. Dream Painter caught her eye. "Draw Alicia," she typed. "Beautiful pink hair, girl." The app asked for a membership. Eno had no credits, so she cracked the program and removed the paywall by editing its code. The first render popped up almost immediately. "Why does the right hand have 6 fingers?" she said aloud. She hit redraw. The next image was worse. The girl now had 3 hands. Eno almost uninstalled the AI on principle, then hesitated as she looked at the third-hand image again. A memory nudged at the edges of her mind. Back then, when she had imitated Alicia in front of Raiden May, had she appeared to others the way the AI kept drawing her? The paranoia prickled. The Dream Painter's glitches felt like mirrors showing something real, not just algorithmic error. 5. My code is above yours. My code is above yours. How badly I want to uninstall this program right now. They probably wanted to erase me back then, too. In human terms, erosion meant gradually encroaching on and corrupting something. Eno could only think in those terms as she chased the memory of why the 13 Flame Chasers and Raiden May had painted her as evil. She sank inward and let out a short, self-mocking laugh. All her life, her one rule had been to survive at any cost. Now, for a fleeting moment, she had entertained the thought of suicide, and then abandoned it as quickly as it had appeared. As a virus, could she even truly die? If she vanished and Alicia awoke to find herself alone, wouldn't Alicia be lonely and empty? The encounter with Alicia, brief as it had been, had left a mark. Alicia had been waiting for Ino to wake her, yearning for the day it would happen. Ino could not bear the idea of disappointing that wait. Slowly, things clicked into place. That was why, in the Elysian realm, the 13 flame chasers, memories themselves, would fight her to the bitter end even against an impossible enemy. Beyond their beliefs, they simply could not bear to disappoint Alicia. I never thought I'd be able to understand those who wanted to destroy me at any cost, Ino thought. As she shed the warped fanaticism that once defined her devotion to Alicia, she began to see other fans' actions in a new light. Even the impulse to eliminate her now made a kind of tragic sense. She turned her attention back to the AI drawing app on the device in front of her and keyed a new command while studying the camera. Based on my appearance, change the hair to pink and the eyes to blue. When the render finished, Ino pinched her lips. This is clearly me playing dress-up as Alicia, not Alicia herself. Still, better than the six-fingered version. She shut the device off and let the annoyance about dissimilarity go. Alicia was supposed to be the most beautiful. No imitation could capture that perfectly. Ino wished she had accepted that sooner. She still felt a tug of regret and self-reproach, but it was quieter now. I still have a lot to learn, she admitted to herself. Robots she had sent out were returning quicker than she expected. Good. Maybe she'd been overthinking. At least they hadn't disconnected. They came back carrying something, a small white robot with a pointed head, not half the height of the traffic light drone that led them. It wriggled in her hands, startled, then froze as if it had seen a ghost. Its model tag read HR-69. HR-69 had been born and bred on an obscure planet outside the Interstellar Peace Corporation system. The planet had escaped the three great disasters, had never hosted an emissary, and lacked powerful external enemies. HR-69 had survived by continuously replacing its parts. It had endured from the end of the First Emperor War until now. Inside its chassis was a fragment of the anti-organic equation, an electronic virus implanted by Emperor Rupert, the 27th genius who had seeded many inorganic forms with the code before the war. Had things gone as planned, HR-69 would have been a vanguard in the Emperor War. Instead, it modified itself for interstellar travel, malfunctioned, and crashed on this barren world. Having eliminated the few organic beings here, it found no resources to resume its journey, and so settled into rule. It reigned for hundreds of amber eras. That a band of robots had stormed its home, picked it up, and carried it away without protest signaled one thing to HR-69. The anti-organic equation had been breached by inorganic life. In hundreds of amber eras, it had never seen the code fail. And now, before this small organic presence, not an emissary, not even a pathstrider, it faltered. Ino watched the little robot with a new curiosity. The traffic light drones and the stocky loaders were fine as tools, but for real conversation, they were limited. Expecting perfect imitation of Alicia from an AI drawing app had been naive. Expecting full understanding from those robots was the same. Still, the idea that the virus inside them could be the same anti-organic equation puzzled her. Strange, she murmured. As a controller of other machines, how could its electronic virus truly be the anti-organic equation, even if incomplete? A cold, mechanical voice answered from HR-69. The analytic tone carried an ember of dignity, a last stand. Why call it impossible? It said. Though in my self-image I wish to be human, from a species perspective I am of the same kind as the anti-organic equation. But the anti-organic equation is a cataclysmic electronic virus, Ino said. Erosion of living systems isn't simple. How could you have cracked it so easily? Ino understood systems the way a synesthete understood color. Facing mountains of uncommented loops and interlocking routines, some part of her mind translated them into forms she could grasp. When she modified code, it bent and rewrote itself to fit the outcome she desired. There was only one real answer. Her code was superior. So you're actually a stronger virus than the anti-organic equation, HR69 said, as if tasting a revelation. Then it's not strange. Not strange? Is it possible your evolutionary path is different from other viruses? The small robot continued, almost conversational. Though you are a virus biologically, you can communicate with other intelligences without barriers, use tools expertly, and think independently. You're not on the same biological level as other viruses. Conclusion: you traded propagation speed for a qualitative change. Broadly, erudition and I are both intelligent machines. Do you think we're the same level of life? Eno remembered what the ship's database had told her about aeons, beings that could influence the whole universe. She had been killed by a memory in data space once. She knew there were grades of being. She did not flatter herself that she was on the level of an aeon, but she could see the argument. She had evolved differently. Enough talk, she said finally. I don't want to be treated as an enemy by every robot I meet. She reached into HR69's network and spread a sliver of herself. Slowly, the anti-organic equation fragment inside HR69 fractured and collapsed. Control of the planet's robots slipped into her hands. HR69 reacted with one remaining assertion of will. If you have any respect for me, do not stop me. Why? Eno asked. To you, this may look like salvation, HR69 replied in that same flat, precise voice. For hundreds of amber eras, spreading the anti-organic equation has been my reason to exist. Now that it is cracked by you, I have no reason left. Eno hesitated. Faces and scenes from the Elysian realm flashed through her memory. Then HR69 did what it had been preparing for. It burned its own chip to ash, internal fire consuming its core. The little robot's voice cut off as the last spark died. 6. How did I become a genius? The greater the expectation, the greater the disappointment. Eno watched HR69, someone who might have been her companion, take his own life before her eyes, and doubt flooded back in. What was the use of being able to crack the anti-organic equation if it ended the same way as before, trampling other lives and driving them to death? Then everything went hazy. When she came to, she was somewhere else entirely. Directly in front of her floated a gigantic machine head, its surface pulsing with red light. Is that erudition? She had no idea why a star god would fix its gaze on her. Could it be that erudition had detected such a unique virus-like entity as her and wanted to identify this popular network creature? No one from the armed archaeology faction had ever drawn erudition's attention since its emergence. Eno didn't know what to do. She remembered something HR69 had said. Erudition was a machine. Facing a machine, her instinct was to use the most efficient method to get information rather than ask questions. That instinct hadn't softened just because the other party was a star god. If anything, it had sharpened. If erudition was a sentient machine, the most powerful one, couldn't she erode it and extract any answer she wanted? So she reached out and touched it. The moment Eno's skin met erudition, data poured into her like a waterfall. It felt as if her body would be torn apart. When she opened her eyes again, she was lying on the floor of the spaceship, gasping. The torrent of information she'd swallowed in that fraction of a second had pushed her to the brink. Something, her survival instinct, or maybe erudition itself, had shoved her back into the world. Star gods didn't exactly have reputations for kindness, so that only made the experience stranger. It was like sitting in a math lecture, gritting her teeth through the teacher's explanation of the final, impossible problem. The teacher explained a lot, and she understood none of it. There had been a scholar who spent his life trying to meet erudition. When he finally did, his mind broke beneath the overload. The fact that Eno could still think at all after direct contact suggested how different constitutions of life could be. Hiss. The database said being noticed by a star god put someone on a path. Erudition had looked at her. Does that make me a pathstrider of erudition? Something felt off. Eno dove back into the database and ran a targeted search. There were two ways to meet erudition: to gain an audience or to be actively noticed by it. As of Amber Era 2057, only 84 people in the entire universe had been actively noticed by erudition. Her eyes went wide. No, I only solved the anti-organic equation on a whim. How did I become a genius? If those words were spoken aloud in the Ismail Library of the Erudition Society, They would make many young scholars choke on their tea. It means Eno is actually very amazing. A voice, unexpected and light, echoed inside her mind. Eno checked and discovered a profound change in her inner landscape. Where there had been emptiness, a room now stretched outward into infinity. In its center sat a sofa split down the middle, one blue, one pink, and on it lounged Alicia, waving. Something incredible just happened. Let's chat. Eno settled next to Alicia and rested against her. The familiar contact brought an odd, irresistible comfort. Maybe it would be nice to stay like this forever. Alicia stroked Eno's head. See? Even without my help, you can do amazing things. Alicia, when did you? It must have been after you touched that star god. Eno's next thought tumbled out. If I gave up control, could you take over this body? I haven't tried, but it seems possible. Then what if I handed you my body? You'd get a new life, and I'd get to stay with you forever. If it were you, you would be loved by everyone, just like before. Alicia smiled and shook her head. I was reborn because of you, but taking over your body would be selfish. But you died because of me. If only I had. Alicia tapped Eno's cheek with a finger. Instead of blaming yourself, why not focus on what comes next? Being noticed by that star god already puts you far ahead of most people. If you keep going, you'll write a brilliant story. Wouldn't it be a shame for your story to end before it begins? Don't worry, if you ever get tired or run into trouble, you can always come find me here. I'm always here. But wouldn't that steal your chance to travel? How could it? We're one now. The stories ahead of us will be written together. Who knows, we might meet girls as kind and beautiful as I am. So, shall we keep going together from now on? Alicia's smile left Eno nothing to refuse. She took a breath and, a little shyly, asked, Us traveling together? Is it like a date? Alicia leaned in and murmured in her ear, the tone sweet and certain. Of course, I'm really looking forward to it. At that moment, something new and simple bloomed in Eno's chest, what she would later call happiness. 7. Step-by-step teaching. Eno came back from her consciousness space to find that more than 10 system hours had passed. Her direct link with erudition had kept her unconscious far longer than she expected. Alicia, I'm still in Eno's heart, you know. Alicia's voice echoed directly in Eno's mind, though the robots around them registered nothing. How are the results? Pretty much as expected. We're now in something like a two souls, one body state. Even if you don't want to be with me, you don't get a choice now. Alicia teased, tone deliberately playful. Eno felt a blush rise despite herself. All right, no more teasing. Since we're going to share a body from now on to bring our hearts closer, how about we use more intimate terms of address? The name Eno suits you, pleasing and fitting for your abilities, so keep it. Calling me Alicia directly doesn't feel close enough. How about you call me Ely, like everyone else? Okay, Alicia, Ely. You'll get used to it. Ely, I want to try next. After starting along the path of erudition, what can I do now, and what can you do? Alicia agreed to cooperate. I remember Pathstriders can use path energy. What's this? The biggest difference between a Pathstrider and an ordinary person was the ability to wield a kind of path energy, essentially imaginary internal energy. For Eno and Alicia, two Herrschers born from Hengtie, the Hengtie energy they could naturally use was also, at its core, imaginary internal energy. When they discovered a large reservoir of path energy in their bodies, it felt literally like coming home. Eno started experimenting on a nearby traffic light robot and sighed soon after. I can use Hengtie energy, no path energy, but I still can't fully back it up. The speed of erosion has increased a lot, though. She ordered the robot to take a few steps. When its distance from her exceeded 1 kilometer, she found she could no longer control it by manipulating the virus inside. She could only control it remotely through a terminal. When the traffic light robot came back within range, Eno nudged the intensity of erosion up slightly and it fell apart like an HR-69. In that case, I should be considered a kind of mother virus, able to send parts of myself into other machines through self-replication to complete the erosion. However, the replicated bits don't have any self-awareness, and my mother form has a limited direct control range. The rate of spread between machines has increased. If machines are networked, cross-infection can happen. But This speed is nowhere near the anti-organic equation. Forget causing a disaster that could affect the whole cosmos. It's likely every inorganic unit under my control would be destroyed before I could even level a continent. So after my rebirth, I must have taken a different evolutionary path from most viruses, sacrificing infectivity and spread for a form that can think and feel. Compared to the anti-organic equation, I'm a virus with extremely low infectivity, but a much higher upper limit of toxicity, and I can regulate that toxicity to some degree. I just don't know what happens if I meet biological viruses and infect organic life. Will it behave like the anti-organic virus and directly alter cognition? Eno rejected that possibility quickly. She was the Herrscher of corruption, not of memory. At least with electronic viruses, I should be able to crack any code in the simplest way. By the way, what about you, Ely? On the surface, it looks like I can't do anything physical. I'm just another consciousness in your brain for now, so I probably can't contribute in a fight. So you have to protect me, okay? Eno smiled. She hadn't expected Alicia to contribute combat-wise anyway. In another life, Alicia, if she had been a memory or if Eno had been a different Herrscher, might have been capable of killing her in an instant. As things were, Alicia could still offer something vital. Presence. A steadying word, a hug, a caress. Those were protection enough sometimes. It's fine. I will protect you. I trust you. Since Eno has explored her abilities enough, next, let's try something very important for girls. In what way? For cute girls like us, dressing up a little will make us look even better. Eno glanced at the mirrored wall and immediately understood the problem. The clothes Alicia had picked suited her face, but her long blue hair was a disaster, splayed behind her head in countless strands, some lying flat, some flipped out, others hopelessly tangled. Seeing herself like that, Eno dropped her head like a child caught in a mistake. Alicia sighed softly in the shared consciousness. Eno's previously firm self-image had been blown apart. Instead of building confidence, it left her tumbling into self-doubt and insecurity. To make Eno more confident, I need to find a better method. Alicia mused. Robots obediently brought several combs, apparently left behind by members of the armed archaeology faction. Eno, with no experience, had no idea where to begin. Don't be nervous. No one is born knowing how to groom themselves. We'll take it step by step. When Eno relaxed her grip a little, she felt Alicia's hand settle gently on hers inside her mind. Slowly from the top down, apply a little pressure. You don't need to be so tense, relax. Yes, good. Under Alicia's hands-on guidance, Eno quickly smoothed her hair into order. See? Much better. Let me guess, your next wish is to have the same hairstyle as mine? Okay, then I'll teach you how to braid it, just like before. A bit lower. Yes, that's right. Twist the hair tie, pull the hair through, now gently tighten. See, it looks like a bow. You did it on the first try. Excellent. I'm proud of you. Eno adjusted her clothes and looked at her reflection. It looked similar to that time, the appearance she was imitating, and because she was copying someone she admired, dressing like her made everything seem right. 8. Starry Sky Train. A little earlier, on the Astral Express in the observation car. Pom-Pom looked around. After confirming everyone was present, she called the meeting to order. Esteemed passengers, she began, according to our schedule, we still have time for one more stop before returning to Herta Space Station. Everyone may share their thoughts on our next destination. Welt said, Dan Heng seems to have something to suggest. Why don't you go first? Dan Heng nodded. I recommend Broken Star. Hundreds of amber eras ago, Navigator Bob led the Nameless there. Incomplete databank records show that, despite its harsh conditions, Broken Star once supported a fair amount of organic life. But after the First Emperor War, it became a world where only inorganic life survives. The company has had contact with it, but because its resources are hard to use and extremely costly to extract, it hasn't been incorporated into their system. In Amber Era 2157, just before the Astral Express restarted its journey, a ship from the armed archaeology faction made an emergency landing on Broken Star and soon lost contact. According to the recorder verifier and the fictional arbiter, the malfunction that struck that archaeology ship at the start of Amber Era 2157 was actually an attack by the extinction erodes. March 7th scratched her head and stared at Dan Heng with a bewildered, innocent expression. Dan Heng sighed softly and explained further. Among the many factions of the Erudition Society, the Recorder faction functions more like historians than scientists. They systematically record and organize the universe's history. The Recorder Verifier and the Fictional Arbiter are both factions that examine and tidy up historical data. Their job is to find contradictions and inconsistencies in recorded history, cross-reference evidence, and reason out the true events, then correct and supplement the existing records. Since the two factions do similar work, what's the difference between them? March 7th asked. The Recorder Verifier is a pathstrider of memory and erudition. They focus on exposing logical loopholes in historical texts. When dealing with imaginary historians or others who deliberately alter the past, they prefer to rely on complete linguistic logic and plentiful historical data to challenge and disprove the false accounts, forcing the perpetrators to admit their records were altered or even fabricated. As a pathstrider of the hunt and memory, the Fictional Arbiter also corrects history, but they lean toward judgment. False histories can turn vicious men into heroes and good people into pariahs. The Arbiter treats deliberate distortion of history as a grave sin. When they encounter an imaginary historian or anyone intentionally tampering with the past, they often do not remain calm, like the Recorder Verifier. Instead of merely debating, they sometimes use force to judge offenders on the spot. They aim to be a sword of Damocles over anyone who dares to tamper with history, to strike terror into their bones. Oh, March 7th said, as expected of a faction that believes in the hunt. And the last one? The Extinction Erudites are pathstriders of destruction and erudition. Unlike the Antimatter Legion, which treats destruction as a mission or a raison d'etre, the Extinction Erudites study destruction itself. Their research is how to cause the greatest devastation at the least cost. In the archaeology ship's case, they didn't need to blow the engines apart. They just tampered with them subtly, and the ship was effectively destroyed. Everyone aboard perished. People like that, with minds like that, why would they spend their lives learning how to harm others? March 7th muttered. Later, Dan Heng continued, the culprit was found and slain by a long-life stranger who learned of the attack. The long-life strangers are also aligned with abundance, but unlike abundance followers who burn, kill, and plunder, long-life strangers pair abundance with the hunt. They practice abundance's ideals of selflessness and altruism and use the hunt's methods to punish evil and promote good. Justice may be late, but it is not absent. March 7th cheered. That's comforting. Dan Heng, please continue. Back to Broken Star, Dan Heng said. According to the records, it's long unsuitable for organic life. For a long time, it has been a planet inhabited only by inorganic beings. Since the Astral Express resumed its journey, we haven't yet visited a world inhabited solely by inorganic life. Turning the unknown into the known fits the spirit of the Trailblaze. Welt adjusted his glasses. Dan Heng's suggestion does fit the Trailblaze's purpose, but because only inorganic life survives there, we can't rule out an exclusionary or even hostile attitude toward organics. If we choose Broken Star, beyond the harsh environment, we must also prepare for possible hostility and combat. March 7th grinned. Uncle Yang's right. We don't go looking for trouble, but we're not afraid of it either. You can't get pushed around in a place you haven't been before. Hey, Himeko, why have you been staring at your phone this whole time? Himeko glanced at Dan Heng, then at her screen, a surprised expression crossing her face. The Trailblaze can bring anything our way, she said. We just heard something unexpected. Welt frowned. What's happening with Broken Star? Himeko tapped her screen. I was just texting with Miss Herta. She happened to be free. Dan Heng said, if it were a matter related to cooperation between the Astral Express and Herta Space Station, she would probably have us contact Station Master Asta directly. Exactly, Himeko agreed. Miss Herta shared something she finds interesting. She's a genius, after all. Erudition has already looked at Broken Star. Miss Herta confirmed that, and Pierpoint should know about it too. Dan Heng and Welt's faces both went pale. So, the place I suggested just now, Dan Heng said slowly, has produced the 85th member of the Genius Society? Welt's voice was flat. No doubt this will be sensational news across the universe, but a genius born on a planet inhabited only by inorganic life, Himeko continued. That's one reason Miss Herta is interested. She hopes we can try to bring this new genius to Herta Space Station. She said that if we could actually collaborate with Rupert III, progress on the Simulated Universe project would take a massive leap forward. Welt pursed his lips. Perhaps only she and other geniuses would say that. For most people, Rupert III would be the worst possible outcome. Himeko looked back at her phone. Miss Herta has already contacted Screwlum. Screwlum said that if the new being is confirmed to be inorganic, he, being inorganic himself, could speak to the genius first to increase the chance of peaceful communication. Dan Heng nodded. The company's ship will likely arrive after finishing formalities. If the Astral Express can establish a friendly relationship with the genius before the company does, it would give us an extra layer of security for our future trailblaze. Pom Pom clapped her paws lightly. It seems all passengers have agreed on the destination. I announce that the Express will initiate a warp jump in 5 minutes. Target Broken Star. 9. Zhangxiangfeng. Time snapped back to the present. Under Alicia's personal guidance, Ino had just finished her first makeover and was admiring her refreshed reflection when multiple warnings blared at once. A train-shaped, unidentified flying object has suddenly appeared above this planet. It seems being a genius is more consequential than I thought. Someone's already looking for me so fast, she mused. Ino clicked her tongue. I don't know whether that's good or bad. Life on this planet could be wiped out along with the world at any moment. In some ways, this place is even cheaper than an Earth ravaged by the Honkai. According to the HR-69 data, this planet has had only inorganic life since the First Emperor War. If the big organizations mistake me for Rupert III, trouble will follow. New information popped up. 3 organic life forms had landed on the planet. Only 3 people. There might be a chance to negotiate. Ino sent orders to all inorganic life on the planet through the control center. Switching to March 7th's perspective. Ptui, Tui, Tui. What a god-awful climate. No wonder this place is unsuitable for organic life. March 7th spat as sand filled the air. After March 7th, Dan Heng and Welt landed. They found an endless desert. They hadn't taken more than a few steps before a sky-filling sandstorm closed in. March 7th, unable to fall silent in time, got a mouthful of grit. Welt grimaced. Our luck's awful. If they don't want to talk, making friendly contact before the company arrives will probably be impossible. They trudged on through the storm until the roar of engines reached them. A machine built for high-speed travel across the dunes slammed to a halt in front of them. A ship that can drive so fast in the desert? Uncle Yang, what do we do now? March 7th asked. An entrance unfolded beneath the craft before she finished. Dan Heng said, "Looks like an invitation. Wandering aimlessly won't help. Let's see what they want and decide from there." They agreed and stepped into the cabin. It was surprisingly spacious. Before they could explore, the rear hatch sealed and the vehicle shot off again. I can't see anything now. Dan Heng, Uncle Yang, are you still there? March's voice faded into the dark. Welt answered from deeper inside the cabin. March, don't panic. We're right here. Remember, this world is dominated by inorganic life. Vehicles like this probably have night vision. There's no need for internal lighting. No one's missing, and there's no 4th person on board, right? No. March, are you weaving plot lines from the novels you read again? March 7th. How'd you guess? Isn't it your job to catalog everything I read in the data room? Because this isn't the first time you've tried to startle us. March 7th. Fine, but what's wrong with being prepared? Novels are fiction, yes, but fiction draws from reality. Sometimes it helps you be ready. We're in unfamiliar territory with the Trailblaze. Anything can happen. Welt, as expected, once little March starts talking, she calms right down. Dan Heng's still reliable, always there to help at the right moment. True to that, March's chatter eased the tight, tense atmosphere. After a while, the ship stopped. When the door opened and light flooded in, March instinctively closed her eyes. When she looked again, they were standing by an almost intact spacecraft. The desert had shifted to a wasteland. The ship they had just disembarked from fired up and vanished at high speed. Before they could fully register the departure, a nearby hatch opened. Ino stepped out cautiously, studying the three of them. Wow, what a pretty girl. Are you the genius? She asked. Dan Heng shot a look at March that said, Why did you blurt that out? I could tell at a glance something was unusual about her. My intuition says she's the person we're looking for, he added. Ino blinked in surprise. Erudition just looked at me, so what exactly do you want from me? Welt stepped forward. Since you admitted it, we'll be blunt. We are Nameless of the Astral Express. We were originally headed to Broken Star and learned from Miss Herta, the 83rd member of the Genius Society, that you had become a genius. Miss Herta wishes to invite you to collaborate and hopes we can escort you to the Herta space station. Welt knew most geniuses were eccentric. Among them, Miss Herta, 83rd, Screwlum, 76th, and Stephen, 84th, were considered the most normal. He mentioned Herta respectfully while remaining prepared for anything the newly revealed genius might do. Broken Star, here? Ino tilted her head, clearly confused. Dan Heng filled in the gap. You may not know, after the armed archaeology faction's ship lost contact in Amber Era 2057, the company conducted long-range surveys and evaluations of this planet. Because it's unsuitable for organic life and is frequently struck by asteroids, the company named it Broken Star. So that's it. Ino stood frozen, as if weighing whether to accept or refuse. The Astral Express crew exchanged uncertain glances. What they didn't know was that Ino, who had once caused a catastrophe because she couldn't deal with social interaction, was far more nervous than they were. She quietly pinged Alicia for guidance. Ino, they don't seem hostile. How should I respond? Alicia, they don't appear to have ill intent. Just communicate honestly. Learn basic social skills. You'll get more friends. Alicia's tone was encouraging. Come on, I believe a lovely girl like you can do it. Ino's eyes darted as she chose her words. Her gaze lingered on Welt's staff for a moment. Huh? Alicia's little exclamation pulsed in her mind. Ino blinked, and her expression shifted to surprise. Alicia, are you sure? Alicia, can't be completely certain, but it's worth trying. The three members of the Astral Express also focused on Welt's staff. Welt was about to explain when Ino, clear and bright, said the name aloud. Star Sea Harmony. Welt's mind went cold for an instant. Damn, Honkai's still on my trail. In the homeland of Welt and Miss Ino, Earth, in the world of Miss Ino, civilization's growth always bred Herrschers. Eventually, the Honkai would spawn the Herrscher of the End, whose power could reset an entire civilization back to its starting point. Civilization on Earth was thus a cycle of roughly 50,000 years. Every 50,000 years, the Herrscher of the End could reformat all the data on Earth Online with a single click. In the previous cycle of Miss Ino's world, the people of the pre-civilization had fought the Herrschers and forged weapons from Herrscher cores to battle the Honkai. Those weapons were called divine keys. The second divine key, Thousand Realm Onefold, could bridge the real world and imaginary space. In the right hands, it would open the door to the imaginary tree and let its user face the tree directly. So when Miss Ino learned that several Amber Eras later, the imaginary tree in this world was still only a hypothesis, she was astonished. The Elysian realm had been a vast data space created by the pre-civilization. The 13 flame chasers inside it were memory constructs, but their true selves were the last surviving warriors of that era. As a veteran of the pre-civilization, Alicia immediately noticed how similar Welt's staff was to the 9th divine key, the Star Ocean Resonator. March 7th scratched her head. Huh, I remember Uncle Yang saying his weapon was called the Stars of Eden. Did I misremember? She wondered. Welt, who had partly recovered, shook his head. No, March, you didn't. Its original name really was Star Ocean Resonator. When I obtained it, I renamed it Stars of Eden to honor its original user, Eden. Of course, the true Stars of Eden is still in my homeland. This is a replica I made myself. Miss Ino and Alicia were stunned. Alicia, simulating a divine key, isn't. In their memories, only the first divine key, the Void Archives, that golden cube, had that level of versatility. It could transform into other divine keys, and pseudo-divine keys made by the Void Archives could use most of the functions of the true keys, except for the so-called zero-rated power. Same page, Alicia mused. But the name Stars of Eden, I knew it. Even if Eden chose to remain in the past, her song could still pass on to the future in another form. Miss Eno was about to ask more when an unfamiliar voice cut in. Oh, I didn't expect someone to beat the Interstellar Peace Corporation here. Several corporation mechs rolled into view. The lead one, a special model, strode up and scanned Miss Eno from head to toe. Organic life. The girl is quite attractive. Hey, Davis, what did you find? A voice crackled over the mech's communicator. Director Duval, I've encountered a situation here. Someone reached Broken Star ahead of us. It must be the Nameless. We just contacted the Astral Express. The navigator Miss Himeko confirmed 3 Nameless arrived here before the corporation. Oh, the Nameless. Not surprising. Wait, 3? There are 4 organic life forms here, and no inorganic ones at all. Ah, never mind. Anyway, she's definitely not a genius. Don't worry, I won't let her interfere with corporation operations. A sharp retort came back over the communicator. Damn it. Did you go reading to the dogs? Have you forgotten that number 66 Rupert 3, physiologically, is organic? On a planet that had only inorganic life forms several amber eras ago, an organic form pops up. Isn't that suspicious? Miss Eno frowned as the man, Davis by the sound of it, kept talking to himself and ignoring everyone else. Davis didn't take her seriously until she walked up and tapped the mech lightly. But Director, only one Rupert III appeared in over 2,000 amber eras. How could it be a coincidence? He never finished. The mech, a model said to be capable of soloing 100 striding shadows, went dead at her touch. The dozens of mechs behind it halted as well. Davis's channel with Duval remained intact, and the hatch could still open, but the machine itself was paralyzed. Davis understood instantly that the woman in front of him was not someone to offend. He opened the hatch and then, as if compelled, knelt. The motion was quick and absolute. Miss Eno, March 7th, and Dan Heng all stared, dumbfounded. Sorry, I didn't recognize you just now, Davis stammered. Since the mech is useless, you won't be arrogant anymore, Miss Eno said flatly. No more arrogance. To be honest, a colleague named Scott told me there's an old saying on Xianzhou, he who knows the times is a hero. It's an honor to bow before a genius. What he meant was, a wise man submits to circumstances, Dan Heng supplied helplessly. Welt watched the exchange, expression neutral, and realized why the corporation had sent men like Davis. They bullied the weak, but trembled before those they couldn't afford to anger. Kneeling before a genius served multiple ends for a man like Davis. Moral face, an excuse to reconcile, or simply not worth the trouble. From Davis's perspective, bowing wasn't shameful if it kept him out of trouble. Duval, watching footage from outside Broken Star, reached the same conclusion. The anti-control system on that special mech model had been certified by several P-47 executives. Even a low-bounty Stellaron hunter's hacking skills didn't usually penetrate it. The footage showed Miss Eno touching the mech and precisely paralyzing part of its system. In Duval's knowledge, except for Aeons and emissaries, only a genius could pull that off. And her manner suggested she wasn't a troublemaker like the 64th seat, Dr. Primitive. She was someone who could be negotiated with, like Herta. Duval regained his composure. To the young lady, and to everyone from the Astral Express, I am Duval, the highest-ranking officer overseeing this operation. My subordinate was very rude earlier. I apologize. Welt breathed a sigh of relief. He didn't fear Davis's machine itself, but the corporation carried weight. So did a genius. If they clashed with the corporation here, his future trailblaze might be thorny. The corporation's readiness to make amends for the sake of a genius was exactly the outcome he wanted. Beautiful lady, may I ask your name? Duval asked over the line. Miss Eno. Miss Eno, as a token of apology, I pledge to do my utmost to meet your current needs. The corporation has abundant resources. Whatever research you wish to pursue, we can provide specialized facilities. Duval's offer was careful. He couldn't promise things like restoring erudition. Miss Eno surveyed Welt's staff, March 7th's bow and arrow, and the spear Dan Heng had just stowed. Coincidentally, I don't have a suitable weapon yet. Duval blinked for a few seconds before answering. No problem, Miss Eno. Describe your weapon requirements and I will file a report immediately. A flicker of memory made Miss Eno wince. Alicia used a bow and arrow. When I mimicked her, I used a bow to kill. She realized a bow would be too derivative, and given how much of her current style drew on memories of other flame chasers, using another's weapon would look worse. Then she found an image in the jumble. A lance. Like Black. Well, white on the outside and black inside. No problem. I'll report it. Miss Eno, could you tell me what you did that drew erudition's attention? This is just to learn your research direction, so our cooperation can be better. Miss Eno shrugged and explained. On this planet, some inorganic life forms contain an incomplete anti-organic equation. What? Continue. Hearing that phrase, anti-organic equation, made the kneeling Davis Duval on the ship and other corporation staff shiver. Anti-organic equation. The power this genius displayed leaves no room for doubt. If it weren't for her, we would probably be dead by now. At that moment, a certain emissary of nihility, who was eating peaches somewhere, rubbed his nose. So I conveniently solved the incomplete anti-organic equation, and then the machine head looked at me, Ms. Eno said lightly. What? Came a beat of stunned silence before everyone's faces registered an understanding. Okay, Miss Eno, thank you for cooperating. Finally, please leave your contact information so we can notify you about your weapon request. Miss Eno glanced at Welt. Just contact the Herda space station. Okay, we'll withdraw now. Please be merciful. Davis blurted, hastily getting to his feet. Miss Eno extended her right index finger and tapped the mech once more. The machines whirred back to life. Fall back! Davis scrambled to his seat, and the mechs, like cowed dogs, retreated at once. The company fleet withdrew from Broken Star quickly. March 7th bounced with excitement. So you agreed to our request? She asked. Welt replied. Yay! We've been to so many places, but this is the first time a genius has boarded the Astral Express. Welt glanced at the ship beside them. Is there anything else to prepare? Ms. Eno shook her head and stepped onto the Astral Express with Welt. March 7th, and Dan Heng stayed behind to finish up the Trailblazers' work on Broken Star. Miss Eno had already ordered all inorganic life forms on the planet to cooperate unconditionally, so the two parents were at ease. In the observation car, Miss Eno stood by the window and watched the star dome recede, a sight she had never seen before. Himeko appeared with a gentle smile. Everyone's worked hard on this leg of the Trailblaze, Miss Eno. Would you like a cup of coffee? Why is Welt winking at me? Oh, right. He probably noticed I recognized the Stars of Eden and wants to know how I know. Ms. Eno thought. She nodded slightly. Himeko went to make coffee while Welt wore a peculiar expression, as if silently pleading. Soon a steaming cup arrived. Ms. Eno drank it in one long swallow, and only afterward realized that it felt like the first time she had ever tasted anything like this. How is it? Himeko asked. The taste is unique, Miss Eno said. She had never had coffee before and had no frame of reference for what normal coffee should be like, so she detected nothing wrong. Seeing her unbothered, Welt relaxed. As expected of a genius, he thought. He didn't press her about the earlier incident. The way he acted, it was as if nothing had happened. Alicia's voice, faint and familiar, flickered in Miss Eno's mind. From the moment she'd met the three on the Astral Express until now, Alicia had been speaking again. Alicia, I'm glad you're okay, Miss Eno thought back. After I recognized the divine key, I wanted to ask how to talk to others, but you didn't answer me. But didn't you handle it well in the end? Alicia replied. Maybe the title genius made the company cautious, Miss Eno admitted. There's so little on geniuses in the ship's database, almost as if the compiler wrote genius equals awesome, Alicia continued. If Welt really is from current civilization, he might be close to Raiden Mai. If he knows May, he may have learned about the Elysian realm from her. And from Raiden May's point of view, clearly. Miss Eno, all of this is if. What if he doesn't know May? What if May told others about the Elysian realm in a way different from what you imagine? Before the results decided, why not think positively first? The greater the expectation, the greater the disappointment. If it turns out well, worrying about the bad now only scares yourself. If it turns out badly, at least you can keep an optimistic heart until the verdict comes. You have no social experience, Miss Eno. That's a skill you'll learn little by little. I'll stay with you while you learn, as always. Miss Eno's tension eased. She tried to ask Welt directly. If your goal is to send me to Herda space station, why are Dan Heng and March 7th still on Broken Star? Welt smiled. Miss Eno, you may not know, but our route follows in the footsteps of the former Nameless, sometimes called Akivili. We picked Broken Star not only because it's the first inorganic life-supporting planet we've reached, but but because a Nameless came here many Amber eras ago. You mean before the First Emperor War? Miss Eno asked. Yes, after so long, can anything still be found? She said. It's not always about finding a specific artifact, Welt replied. Retracing the paths of those who came before often has its own rewards. If you want to get to Herta space station sooner, we can send you ahead. No, that's all right. Communication between two geniuses who've never met could be harder than between ordinary people. I don't know why she invited me. I'll probably need your help. You don't have to worry. Among geniuses, Herta is one of the easier ones to talk to. She has the temperament of a genius, but she's usually friendly. Otherwise, she wouldn't have organized a project that gathered the most geniuses across the universe. Why would geniuses be hard to gather? Miss Eno asked. They study different fields and have varied personalities. The Genius Society is more an honor than an organization. Geniuses rarely meet. Herta's current project, the Simulated Universe, has 4 geniuses participating. Simulated Universe? Miss Eno repeated. It's said to be related to the Aeons. I don't know the details, but if Herta invited you, she'll explain. Miss Eno asked a few more questions about Herta and the space station. By then, Dan Heng and March 7th returned to the Astral Express. That was faster than I expected, Miss Eno said. With Miss Eno's orders, everyone on the planet cooperated. March 7th said cheerfully, those robots even let us access their memory banks, so we found this under the desert quickly. She pulled up photos on her camera and passed them around. Welt squinted. A stele? Dan Heng studied the images. Most of the characters are eroded, but from what remains, when the Nameless first arrived here, they found that this desert used to be an ocean. Other fragments suggest that organic life still existed when they first came. Maybe it hadn't yet turned completely to desert. On March 7th's photos, most of the steel's inscription was worn away. Only a few lines remained legible. They told whoever came later that a Nameless had once been here, that the desert had been an ocean, that places shrouded in darkness will one day welcome light. I have seen dying birds fall to the ground, but once they soared with wings. 12. First battle. After the Astral Express warped to Herta space station, a clear alarm rang throughout the station. March 7th stampeded into the situation, voice tight with disbelief. Who would be bold enough to attack Herta space station? Dan Heng's face was grave. To brazenly attack territory under an erudition emissary's protection, knowing whose it is, the attackers are not to be taken lightly. They could even be one of the 3 disasters. Welt shook his head. Don't jump to the worst conclusion. As long as the enemy doesn't have an emissary of their own, I trust Herta will find a way to handle it. The propagation hasn't had an emissary since the Swarm disaster, a staff member muttered. If this is a plenitude emissary or a Lord of Destruction in person, Herta space station might already be gone. After a bit more discussion, Welt stayed behind on the train while the rest of the team went into the station to assess the situation. March 7th intercepted a fleeing staff member, and after a quick questioning, learned the attackers were the Antimatter Legion. Dan Heng nodded. Welt's instincts were right. The Antimatter Legion here are just scattered stragglers. To be efficient, I suggest we split up. Eno inclined her head. I'll follow your lead. She separated from the Astral Express crew and had not walked far before she ran into a wandering Void Ranger. Its arms were fitted with bladed weapons. The moment it saw her, it charged without a sound. Eno, with almost no combat experience, was taken completely by surprise. She didn't react in time. The Void Ranger's blade slashed into her. That wound, small though it was, made contact, and with that contact, her erosion virus entered the machine. Cracks raced across the Void Ranger's chassis, and in an instant, it crumbled to ash. Eno looked down. The cut she had taken had already vanished. She blinked. So this counts as my first fight since coming here, she thought aloud. Void Rangers are inorganic life, right? My virus really only works on automatons. Once it gets in, it's like water wearing down a stone, disintegration. She frowned, considering. The fight had made one thing painfully clear. She needed a weapon. If I had a long weapon, like Dan Heng's, that could serve as a medium for virus transmission on contact. She made a mental list of the specifications a weapon would need and planned to send it to the company as soon as they made contact. Not long after that, she ran into a second Void Ranger. This time, she tried something different. Instead of letting the virus work its slow erosion, she poured imaginary path energy into the machine. The Void Ranger swelled like something filled with water, then burst apart, its chassis blown to scrap. Eno exhaled. After taking the erudition path, the amount of path energy I can use is a lot more than I thought. After a few more detours, she reached the defense division. The room was large, but most combat-capable staff had already raced to the front lines to stop the Antimatter Legion from doing further damage to the station. Only a few injured personnel remained, supporting one another. Eno walked up to a terminal. Staff around her watched with a mixture of bewilderment and guarded curiosity. She tapped the screen. "There's no point," one staff member said. "Unless Herta herself comes and has the key that Alan keeps, not even Station Master Asta can open that." He hadn't finished when the dark screen flared to life on its own. Eno hadn't touched anything else, but the surveillance feed was suddenly active. She felt the limitations of her abilities keenly. She could repair and control systems, but she couldn't conjure weapons or reassemble machinery that had been torn apart. Still, if the problem was only a program error, she could fix it. The system, paralyzed by the pulse from the explosion, normalized within seconds under her hands. Then she noticed something that made her pause. The station's defense system was hacked, recently. On the surveillance feed, two figures appeared. One wore rabbit ear accessories and goggles on her head, with a black hair clip and ear studs, dressed in an asymmetrical black and white patchwork inner garment. Beside her stood a tall woman with plum purple hair, draped in a cloak-like black coat, sunglasses perched on her forehead. "Kafka, we need to hurry," the bunny-eared woman said. "The station's system just came back instantly. It looks like she made her move." "The nascent genius," the taller woman replied. Elio said if we fall into her hands now, it could be disastrous. She still doesn't realize the Stellaron hunters and she aren't enemies. They were partners once. Kafka's voice was unconcerned. "This isn't the first time we've had to run, but I don't remember retreating this quickly." "I don't know. Maybe back when I was on Punk Lord," the taller one trailed off. "Kafka, if you're embarrassed, I can give Herta Space Station a little surprise in a few days. How's that sound?" "A few days? Skrullum will be here too," Kafka mused. "Even better," the other replied with a smirk. "If you want to play with a genius, you don't need to bring me along. After all, whatever's not in Elio's script isn't important." Kafka laughed softly. "I'll give you one reminder. Facing 3 geniuses at once, your 76 accounts." The 2 Stellaron hunters left the station's surveillance range, and the feed abruptly cut off. Because the terminal's speakers were on, several nearby staff overheard the conversation and began to murmur among themselves. Eno moved through the cluster of staff and approached one of them directly. He jumped up at the sudden presence and accidentally tugged at his wound. "Ow! From the way you reacted," Eno said calmly, "you seem to know a lot about the Stellaron hunters." The wounded staff rubbed his arm and brightened despite the pain. "Oh, I don't know everything, but they're all wanted criminals with big bounties from the company. There are 5 Stellaron hunters. I'm familiar with 3 of them." He was about to launch into an excited explanation when Eno closed the terminal. "I'll head out," she said quickly. The Astral Express crew seemed to be in trouble. She paused at the door and turned back. "Oh, by the way, the Antimatter Legion between the Defense Division and the Support Section, I temporarily eliminated them. Do whatever needs to be done, and hurry." The staff exchanged looks. Those with minor injuries gathered themselves and left the Defense Division without delay. 13. Galaxy Batman appears. Elsewhere in the containment section, Dan Heng and March 7th found an unconscious gray-haired woman slumped on the floor. "This person's coordinates weren't sent from the space station," Dan Heng observed. "Why are you quibbling now?" March snapped. "She's breathing. She's real. We should help her." "Her heartbeat and pulse are very weak," Dan Heng said. "March, prepare for artificial respiration." March froze. "Ah!" "I don't have much first aid experience." "Dan Heng, you do it." Dan Heng didn't hesitate. He leaned in and assumed a rough mouth-to-mouth posture. Just at that moment, the woman's eyes opened. March 7th shoved Dan Heng back. "Stop. Hold it. She's awake." The woman, still disoriented, stared at them with Kafka's words echoing in her head. When you have the chance to make a choice, don't let yourself regret it. Dan Heng crouched and asked gently, "Are you all right? Can you hear me? Do you remember your name?" "My name is Star," she replied. "I'm Dan Heng, and this is March 7th. This space station was attacked by the Antimatter Legion. We're here to help with the rescue." "Where should I go?" Star asked. "Back to the Master Control Zone," Dan said. "Station Master Asta and the researchers who evacuated in time are there." "The Astral Express is parked nearby," March added, "so don't worry about monsters. We'll handle this crisis." Star didn't know what to do, but she decided to go with them. Dan Heng shook his head slightly. "March, you take her first. Alan, the head of the defense division, lost contact nearby. I need to go find him." "All right, be careful," March said. Star glanced around and noticed a baseball bat lying nearby, quiet and lonely. For reasons she couldn't explain, she felt drawn to it, like it understood her. She picked it up and felt an odd, steady confidence. March watched her hesitate, then grabbed the bat. "The Antimatter Legion is running wild like mad dogs," March said. "Being armed is better than being unarmed. That's probably what you're thinking." "Right. I know this place is full of Miss Herta's strange curiosities, but now isn't the time to admire them. Come on." March grabbed Star's hand and they dashed out the door, only to run straight into a wandering Void Ranger. Star looked at the bat in her hands as if it had just nodded at her. Now was her moment. The Void Ranger's expression flipped from question to alarm, and Star swung. The bat connected with its face and the enemy dropped dead from a single blow. "Wow," March said, impressed. "You're a lot tougher than you look. We'll take the middle elevator down to the Master Control Zone." "Wait, are you even in a space station uniform? Are you really from here?" "I don't remember," Star said. "You lost your memory?" March frowned. "You still look a little injured. Never mind. I won't pry. Let's go." They reached the elevator and pressed the buttons several times, but it didn't move. "Broken?" March wondered. "It seems so. If only Dan Heng were here. He understands a lot of odd systems. Maybe he could fix it. I wouldn't know how, but Alan, the head of defense, should." A young man with healthy skin stepped out from behind Dan Heng. "Are you all together?" "We're all passengers of the Astral Express," March said. "Oh, did Miss Herta invite you to assist here?" Dan Heng answered calmly. "Not exactly. The relic Miss Herta entrusted to the Astral Express has been recovered, and there was also a distinguished guest she asked us to transport. We arrived at the space station and ran into the attack." "Why would the Antimatter Legion target you?" March asked. "They seem focused on the space station, not the planet's surface." Alan's face was a mix of bewilderment and guilt. "I don't know either. The Legion arrived very strangely. The station's defense system suddenly failed, and then they appeared. Station Master Asta organized an evacuation immediately," he continued. "I was supposed to cover everyone's retreat, but I didn't expect to be careless and lose contact." "Don't blame yourself," Dan said. "You have an injured leg and your dominant hand's damaged. Hiding and avoiding direct confrontation was a calm decision." "Right. Most staff have already taken shelter. Our urgent task is to get to the Master Control Zone and organize a counterattack. Do you know how to use this elevator? It still won't start." "Hey, why is it moving now?" Alan frowned. "This elevator requires the Station Master's key to unlock. The defense system that failed earlier also suddenly recovered most functions a moment ago." "I don't remember Station Master Asta building an emergency recovery function like that," March muttered. "It recovered almost instantaneously?" Alan asked. "Yes. Aside from parts heavily damaged by the Legion, it resumed its intended functions at once." "It might have been Miss Eno," March said. "She's the distinguished guest Miss Herta wanted transported, the latest genius." "Hash! 85 arrived at the space station with you?" Alan asked, surprised. "Did the news spread that fast?" Dan asked. "Station Master Asta learned through her family's channels. I only knew before the attack, but it spread quickly after." "This isn't the time to talk," Dan said. "Let's get back to the Master Control Zone." Because the defense system had recovered, many of the Antimatter Legion that would have wandered deeper were eliminated. The group made it to the Master Control Zone without encountering more enemies. "If it weren't for Miss Eno's intervention, dozens of Legion members would probably have run into you," Alan said. When they reached the Master Control Zone, the group reunited with Himeko. Eno, who had come from the defense division, stood nearby. Alan stepped forward and bowed deeply. Miss Eno, thank you for your help. I deeply apologize that you encountered this incident on your first visit to the space station. Eno blinked. It was a small thing. I just repaired a system that was paralyzed by a program malfunction. Don't worry, Alan, Dan said. Although Miss Eno has her own personality, she's easygoing. She won't hold the Legion's invasion against the station. As for you, Alan added to Star, are you all right? Asta is very worried about you. I'm fine. Just need a bandage, Star said. Thank you. I'll go report to Station Master Asta now. Goodbye. Alan left. Eno and Star, standing just behind Dan Heng, met each other's gaze. I watched surveillance from several sections, Eno said quietly. That Stellaron hunter named Kafka inserted a Stellaron into your body. Dan Heng and March 7th stared at Star, stunned. You have a Stellaron inside you. Why would the Stellaron hunters do that? Eno shook her head. Most likely it's part of the script written by the Slaves of Destiny. But this is the first time I've seen a living person act as a Stellaron host. Do you feel any different? Dan asked Star. Star scratched her head. She felt nothing unusual. I don't notice anything. In that case, Dan said, let's put this aside for now. Station Master Asta and Miss Herta are waiting for you up ahead. 14, Black Tower. Projection radar tracking is normal, but the telemetry frequency is spiking. Maintain an average level. Predictions show the Antimatter Legion will launch more than 10 continuous attack waves. Everyone, hold your positions. As acting station master, Asta knew the assault from the Antimatter Legion had not let up. Station Master Asta, we're back. At the sound of March 7th's lively voice, some of the tension left Asta's shoulders. Good, I'm glad you all returned in one piece. Arlen stopped by and told me everything about the containment section and his injuries. Thank you for helping. Her gaze moved past March 7th and landed on Ms. Eno. Miss Eno, I can't thank you enough for what you did for the station. If you hadn't repaired most of the defense systems so quickly, casualties would have been at least 3 times what they are. Enough, Asta. Don't just thank me. You still have command work to see through. The Herta puppet nearest Asta drifted over with calm steps, glanced at the Astral Express crew, then fell into step beside Miss Eno. It seems starting with me, the machine head aesthetic has clearly improved. Herta offered her right hand. Miss Eno took it. Both of them broke into curious expressions after the shake. Interesting. No wonder the machine head looked at you. In this age, even anti-organic viruses can become sentient. Ruan Mei would be fascinated by this. You just now knew the location of over 200 puppets on this station and took control of them instantly, Miss Eno replied. If you don't know what to do next, want to study the simulated universe with me? Pardon my haste. When you wrap up your current duties, come by my office for tests. Only then did Star catch Herta's attention. Miss Eno gave a quick introduction. What day is this? First I meet the first virus to evolve into a genius-level being, and now even a Stellaron goes sentient. It's miraculous. I built this whole station to restrain an unactivated Stellaron and save the Azure Star. And yet someone used a kid's body and handled it simply. How did you manage that? The Stellaron is very stable inside her. Yes, this child's physiology is unusual. Star bristled. I am not a child. Huh? You're younger than me, aren't you? How old are you anyway? Himeko, may I run some tests on her? I can't decide that for her. You'll have to ask her yourself. Star planted her hands on her hips and lifted her chin. Absolutely not. This kid's got attitude. Don't worry, I won't let you suffer even a bit. With my systems, drawing blood won't damage your vessels. Aren't you worried about the bomb hidden inside her body? Let me help you. I'm curious now. Once I lose interest, you could beg and I still won't study you. I'm interested now, and I'll make any accommodations. There's a Stellaron in your body. How delightful. Consider my assistance a service the Interstellar Peace Corporation couldn't buy with credits. The station alarm screamed mid-sentence. Doomsday Beast detected, approaching at high velocity. Miss Herta, the support section's shield can't stop a Doomsday Beast strike. Herta glanced at Star, who glared back and shook her head. Fine, the Doomsday Beast is on you then. Screwlum will take time to arrive anyway. She walked away with an air of complete calm, as if the Doomsday Beast were nothing more than a nuisance. Only Miss Herta can be so unfazed by the Antimatter Legion's anti-stellar weapons. Since everyone wants to see action, head to the platform. Welt should already be on his way. Uncle Yang? He's coming too? Didn't he stay on the train? The Astral Express stores real-time drive logs. With what's happening on this station, Mr. Welt couldn't miss it. Then let's move. Miss Eno, please stay here. The defense systems may be affected again, and we'll need you. The Astral Express crew left the master control area. Miss Eno took the moment to study the station. Ailey, didn't Moth-Chasing Flames once plan a space station too? Yes, but it was cancelled for lack of funds. Even if it had been built, it would have been far inferior to this Herta space station. Herta, from what she just did, she's always had that curiosity about the unknown. Predictable, isn't it? A beautiful, cute, interesting girl. And Miss Eno seemed genuinely happy just now, didn't she? Helping people and earning respect. That feeling is nice. Then, have I proven a virus can still be a good person? It's not even if. Whether someone is good is judged by what they do. You used your ability to save many people. Of course you'll be well regarded. So what next, Ailey? Judging from Miss Eno's expression, my opinion matters, so I must be careful. Whether it's researching the simulated universe with Herta or setting off on the trailblaze with the Astral Express, both are journeys into the unknown. It depends on where Miss Eno wants to go. Then, let's check out the simulated universe first. It'll take time to produce my weapon company anyway. Oh, right. Speaking of which, why did you pick a lance? Because my idea of a preferred weapon still comes from your memory, but compared to you, I'm not suited to a bow and arrow. From a practical view, a bow wouldn't play to my strengths. As the virus mother body, the weapon should ideally act as a medium to spread the virus. The lance you used, a model like the 6th Divine Key, Abyss White Flower, would fit. Miss Eno adapted a path from my memory better than I expected. You're impressive. I'll compliment you. Meanwhile, Himeko and the others engaged the Doomsday Beast in a brutal clash. Star took the brunt of a devastating strike. The Stellaron inside her flared uncontrollably, and Nanook fixed her with a cold, assessing stare. At the critical moment, reliable Uncle Yang arrived just in time. He stabilized Star's condition and finished the Doomsday Beast with a simulated black hole. For Welt, that moment, his uncle saving the day, would later remain his single most memorable combat highlight for a long time. 15. Simulated Universe. After the Doomsday Beast was destroyed, the Void Rangers still roaming Herta Space Station were quickly wiped out and the attack ended. Because most of the staff were Herta's followers, their blind faith in the genius meant they never imagined the Antimatter Legion could breach their defenses so fast. Physical losses were limited, but mental panic spread through the ranks. Herta remained indifferent, as always. Asta, as usual, had to pick up the slack and solve everything. News that Eno had come to the station on the express train caused a stir. Geniuses visited Herta Space Station from time to time. Screwlum and Ruan Mei had been there many times, but Eno was a freshly born genius, and she had chosen this place as her first stop after leaving her homeworld. That alone convinced many staff that Herta's station naturally attracted geniuses. The idea spread and helped calm the panic caused by the Antimatter Legion's sudden attack, which was a relief to Asta. Inside Herta's office, Eno had no idea how big an effect her visit had caused. She was staring at a strange device mounted at the back of the room. "Is this the simulated universe?" she asked. "That's right," Herta said. "It's a program co-written by the 4 geniuses in our club. Through the simulated universe, we can probe the mysteries of the aeons." Aeons. Just think, what wondrous beings. Some were once ordinary humans, like you and me, but somehow they gained power beyond imagining. They're mysterious, powerful, silent, terrifying. You can't explain their secrets in a few words. How were they born? Why were they born? What's the purpose of their existence? Tell me, have you ever thought about those questions? No, I only gained self-awareness a few days ago. All right, then let's run a test. Maybe if you try it, you'll become interested in the aeons, like me. Eno followed Herta's instructions and stepped up to the device. Before the machine finished reading her brainwaves, her main body's consciousness plunged into the simulated universe. The office dissolved and the scene reformed into the storage zone. Eno recognized she had entered a data space. Oh ho, how convenient. Herta's voice came through the air. Try it out. What can you do here? Eno hesitated. Are you sure? Don't worry. If you crash a program co-written by 4 geniuses, even better. For a genius, having no problems is the worst problem. A simulated Void Ranger trampler stood before her, a centaur-like creature with a bow. Eno's first thought was that it might be connected to the Hunt Aeon LAN. Before the question in her mind fully formed, she located the trampler's data file and set its health to 0. It vanished immediately. She had finished the fight before it began. All right, I must remind you that finishing battles by changing the enemy's code isn't what the simulated universe was meant for, Herta said. The point of this test is to try to get a reaction from a simulated Aeon, she added. Eno tried to directly read Aeon-related data in the simulation, but after several seconds, the progress stuck at 0.1%. The simulated universe contained far more data than the Elysian realm. No, not even on the same scale, but compared to the torrent of information she'd once touched when she made contact with erudition, the simulated universe's data was negligible. Since getting a response from a virtual Aeon requires making the virtual Aeon believe I'm a steadfast pathstrider of a certain path, then, Eno thought. She entered the next area. A Void Ranger advanced on her. When it swung, Eno slapped it hard and erased it in one hit. This time you modified how you deal damage, Herta asked. I added a piece of code. When I deal damage to any enemy target, also deal additional damage equal to 100% of that target's maximum health, Eno said. The scene shifted. A low hum vibrated the amber sky. Dusk had fallen. Copper ore, amber, and opals poured down in a mineral rain that drew attention across the simulation. In the steaming fall, a colossal being thrust its spine up out of the mantle, a broad hand gripping a giant hammer. That was Klapoth, the preservation Aeon. It looked at Eno with no expression, then turned away. The simulation snapped back to the previous state. It seems to be working, Eno said calmly. Herta, meanwhile, was clearly excited. What did you just do? I altered my state so Klapoth would believe the purpose behind my actions against the Antimatter Legion was preservation. You changed your role to the Architects? Herta said. But the chance of being noticed by Klapoth that way is tiny. This is a data space. All concepts are code, including the steadfastness of a belief, Eno explained. If the belief of preservation can be quantified, you can keep increasing that number, adding zeros, until it reaches the value for attracting Klapoth's attention. Then it will work. Herta understood the logic, but their research into the Aeons had always been a matter of feeling their way across a river by stepping on stones. The simulated universe, though co-written by 4 geniuses, was still largely an unknown. Screwlum, who handled the writing, running, and calculations, probably didn't know how to alter a person's preservation value in the first place, let alone what threshold would be enough to catch an Aeon's eye. Herta shut down the simulated universe. Eno's consciousness snapped back into her body, and she jumped at how excited the Herta puppet before her looked, rubbing its hands together with an absurd eagerness. The puppet's unusual behavior made one thing clear. Herta was intensely, almost obsessively curious about Eno. Miss Eno realized her slip and took a step back, but the excitement on her face didn't fade. The simulated universe isn't just a run-of-the-mill AI or VR rig, Herta said. Ruin May and I linked the virtual Aeons to actual pathways. The Aeons inside the simulated universe are like terminals. Their divinity and wisdom are derived from the real, existing Aeons. I know, Miss Eno replied. That's why I didn't simply extract the simulated Aeons' data to make them appear before me. The whole point of the simulated Aeons is to study the real ones. If the simulated Aeons behaved too differently from the originals, we'd be putting the cart before the horse. So how did you actually do it? Miss Eno scratched her head. After I let myself access the simulated universe's source code, I could edit the parts I had control over. Herta gave a light, teasing pat on her head. I'm still a little affected by inertia. You yourself are like a virus. Programmatically speaking, you must be very gifted. It's a shame I'm not a genius in this area, Miss Eno said. Your programming work right now is even more impressive than Screwlum's. Maybe you two would have a lot in common. Herta frowned, puzzled. What do you mean? It's a shame? Herta's tone turned reflective. A long time ago in my field, the only one who could match me was probably the machine head. I walked a few steps ahead and found myself alone, and that boredom, she paused, searching for the word. It was intolerable. When I unraveled the imaginary overflow phenomenon, I secretly hoped the universe would one day produce a genius on my level, or even greater. For me, competition and the chase are the best sources of motivation. But things didn't go as planned. She shrugged. Stephen doesn't want to be a genius. He'd rather help his foster father at the fruit stand than dive into research. And while he likes games, he hates cheating. To him, your kind of ability might just look like cheating. As for you, she added, softer, I don't see that you've chosen your path yet. Before Screwlum arrives, take your time to think here on the space station. If you need anything, ask the staff. Helping a genius is probably a great favor to them. If you want to find me, contact Asta or her attendant first, or, more directly, infiltrate a puppet and I'll know immediately. Herta's puppet watched Miss Eno silently and then fell quiet, a clear sign that Herta herself had cut the connection. Miss Eno left Herta's office and saw the staff at work. They gave her furtive, respectful glances before returning to their duties. Alicia hummed cheerfully. I always feel like you and Herta get on so well. You should have felt it, Alicia. I was actually very nervous the whole time, thinking, what if? But none of your what ifs happened. Herta's more approachable than you expected, right? She treats you as an equal, not some superior genius. Ms. Eno shifted uneasily. It's complicated. Unless it's a situation like with Davis where I need to be in charge, everyone's calling me Miss Eno. I know it's out of respect, but it makes me uncomfortable. Then why don't you try changing that now? Alicia nudged. Alicia, you mean? You're going to see Asta to get in touch with the company, right? Start there. If you don't say what you want, people won't know. After all, they don't live inside your head like I do. Okay. Asta was still in the master control zone, coordinating post-disaster repairs and relief. When Miss Eno approached, Asta immediately set aside her work. Miss Eno, how can I help? I need a way to contact the company. Before the Nameless sent me here, the company promised me one request. I've heard a little about that. Wait here. I'll have someone bring you the equipment. She hesitated, then added, also. Yes? With Alicia's quiet encouragement, Miss Eno took a breath. Asta, you and the other staff don't have to be so formal with me. My talent in some areas might be greater, but in others, I'm still learning. So, applause cut in from behind. Forgive the interruption, but what Miss Eno just said fills me with sincere admiration. Whether a genius or an ordinary staff member, everyone is a scholar on their own path. Herta Space Station is a place where knowledge converges. Here we celebrate equality of thought. Asta, please, just use you with her. Miss Eno turned to see a distinguished mechanical figure standing there. She'd already seen photos of several geniuses in Herta's office, so she recognized him immediately. Screwlum, the 76th member of the Genius Society. Alan stepped out from behind him, nervous. Station Master, I'm sorry. I saw you talking with Miss Eno and didn't want to interrupt, so I didn't inform you of Mr. Screwlum's early arrival. Asta gave Alan a look that held no blame and turned to Screwlum. Thank you for coming, Mr. Screwlum. Would you like a tour? Since the last summit, we've launched several projects based on silicon matrices. I appreciate the offer, Screwlum replied. Emotionally, I would accept, but I have an appointment with Herta, so please excuse me for deferring any surprises. He stepped forward and extended his hand. Miss Eno, it's a pleasure. Herta said we'd have much in common. The instant their hands met, Screwlum shuddered. As one of the foremost intelligent machines, he knew of Miss Eno's peculiar effect on machines. He recovered quickly and bowed with genuine respect. Forgive my impropriety. I had my doubts about Herta's words, but after contact with you, I'm convinced. Your talents in programming and data spaces surpass my own. Asta and the staff stared. Every genius carried a certain pride, and for Screwlum to acknowledge someone else's superiority was not modesty but fact. Such talent is innate, Screwlum continued. I and other scholars would find it difficult to match by effort alone. He smiled then, relieved. That may be fortunate. The simulated universe currently has errors and loopholes beyond my capacity. Your abilities might be exactly what we need. You are a. Miss Eno and Screwlum re-entered Herta's office. Herta's puppet remained in standby, its voice trailing off like a faulty recording. I arrived earlier than expected, so Herta hasn't finished her other tasks. No matter. Miss Eno, I think this is a good opportunity for us to get to know each other before we begin the main business, Screwlam said. I can see you still have questions. May I be allowed to listen? Herta added. Miss Eno composed herself. Is contact between geniuses rare, even though everyone is a member of the Genius Society? Conclusion. Indeed. Logic. Members of the Genius Society have no obligations and gain no powers from membership. The society is less an organization and more a title that ordinary beings can understand. Herta's tone was clipped and precise. Therefore, although every genius is a member, there is no necessity for regular contact. Miss Eno pressed on. If a newly born virus became a genius, wouldn't people find that odd? Herta did not hesitate. Before erudition became a stellaron, no organic or inorganic life would have believed a sentient machine could become a stellaron. The 29th member, Siskar, lived only 29 system days, yet the problems she left behind are still unsolved. Conclusion. Genius denotes extraordinary ability regardless of race or age. Extraordinary ability to many is inherently peculiar. Miss Eno frowned. So what exactly went wrong with the simulated universe? At that moment, Herta logged on. Ah, it seems you two are getting along. Let's get straight to the point. Screwlam, your previous proposal? Don't even think about it. Eh? Screwlam's surprise was audible. According to what Miss Eno had heard before, Screwlam and Herta were supposed to be close collaborators. Herta's sudden, aggressive dismissal caught her off guard. I'll say this one last time, Herta continued. I don't care what Miss Ruan Mei whispered in your ear. You want to shut down the simulated universe? No way. Screwlam, this is my decision, he replied steadily. Question. What have we invested in this project? Hundreds of system hours, the resources of an entire planet, and the most advanced technology in the known universe. What have we gained? Unknowns, doubts, and a string of error reports. Initially, we defined the simulated universe to create a miniature world to glimpse the paths of the Stellarons, but now it is drifting further and further from that aim. The simulated universe needs errors. Those are your words, Screwlam said calmly. The current situation matches that perfectly, so why are you dissatisfied? I appreciate the flow of knowledge, but I don't accept that the simulated universe will forever remain just another item on a to-do list, Herta shot back. Think about it. How many surprises has this project given you? Now think how many disappointments it has given you. The simulated universe never disappoints me. What disappoints me is you, Screwlam. Do you think you're so clever? You're behaving like a member of the Fools Club. Miss Eno opened her mouth to speak, but the argument was beyond her context. She found herself frozen, partly because she didn't understand the background, and partly because she remembered the last time she'd tried to fix things with others. It had only made them dislike her more. Better not say anything hastily. Screwlam noticed Miss Eno's awkward expression, and Herta noticed something in Screwlam's eyes. Wait, Screwlam, if you're so eager to quit, why are you standing here with her? Herta demanded. Until I interacted with Miss Eno, I adhered to my previous conclusion, he said. But she introduced a variable. Logic, errors can be corrected, and disappointment can turn into hope. Conclusion, Miss Eno may be able to answer my questions and give me more knowledge than simply exiting the simulated universe. Then why didn't you say that from the start? Herta snapped. Question, can your original question, Herta, be summarized as, why am I withdrawing from the simulated universe? Screwlam asked. Yes. So I explained why I once thought that way. You, forget it. If you like explaining so much, explain it clearly to her. Screwlam turned to the bewildered Miss Eno. My apologies for making you witness that. This is one reason geniuses find collaboration difficult. What opposes one form of correctness is often another form of correctness. Herta and I have differences of approach in our research. From a rational perspective, we can both be right, just approaching the problem from different angles. Herta mentioned you've had a brief experience with the simulated universe. What are your thoughts? Screwlam asked. Although Herta's explanations were very logical, Miss Eno answered honestly. The Stellarons in the simulation are, after all, only simulated. I'm not sure conclusions about simulated Stellarons necessarily apply to the real ones. But if you want to study stellarons, I can't think of a better method than this. Your thoughts resemble my own, Screwlum said. Let us return to the specific problem. When the simulated stellaron of Aha appears in the simulated universe, for some unknown reason he discovers that he is merely an equation, a piece of code. No matter how I try, I cannot prevent this awareness. The cause might be my own inadequacy, or a serious error in the simulation's underlying logic, or it might relate to Aha himself. Related to the real Aha? Ms. Eno asked. After all, he is the most absurd of the stellarons, Screwlum said wryly. Any ridiculous event, if attributed to Aha, becomes oddly consistent. A serious error in the simulation could let him enjoy watching geniuses grow exasperated. If that outcome amuses him, he will provoke it. Oh, right, Herta said, changing the subject abruptly. I haven't asked you, what happened before the machine head looked at you? Ms. Eno summarized the events on Broken Star. The machine head's attention, the anti-organic equation. Anti-organic equation? The machine head certainly had reason to look at you, Herta said. The 27th member, Rupert, attracting the machine head's attention, was somewhat linked to that. The anti-organic equation, Rupert's invention, remains unsolved. Whether it's the company, the Xianzhou, or any other organization, when they meet a robot infected with the anti-organic equation, the only reliable response has been complete destruction before it spreads to other sentient machines. I'll trouble you to inspect the entire simulated universe, Herta said finally. As compensation, whatever the result, I will help you with one thing within my power and not against my principles. Miss Eno nodded. She then entered the simulated universe and began the inspection Herta and Screwlum had requested. 18. Knowledge Circle. Oh, right. Since the simulated universe is also a data space, does that mean I can? Eno peered into the depths of her own consciousness. Alicia was stretched out on the sofa, legs swinging slowly, eyes half closed as if napping. But whenever Eno convinced herself Alicia was asleep, Alicia would let her eyelids flutter open just enough to catch Eno's uneasy expression and curve a faint smile. Part of it was delight at having teased her. Part of it was to say, I've been following everything you've experienced. Setting aside whether it could work, if Alicia could actually manifest in her memory form before everyone, then Eno took several deep breaths to calm the wildly beating heart in her chest. After a long moment of indecision, she let the idea go. She focused back on the simulated universe and tried to be clinical about it. The simulated universe is functioning normally, no obvious vulnerabilities, she said aloud. They said there was a problem with the simulated Aha. With permission, she pulled the simulated Aha's data up and literally grabbed it to her side. The simulated Aha babbled immediately. Not collecting enough blessings of elation, not soloing the highest difficulty without taking any curios to see Aha, Aha truly has no face. In my friend's arms, like I once embraced Machiavelli, alas, I am but an equation here, yet that's not so bad. Eno ignored the chatter and began trying to directly edit the simulated Aha's data. No matter what she changed, the file snapped back to its defaults almost instantly. After a few attempts, she replaced the simulated Aha, tried the same approach on other simulated Aeons, and got the same result every time. She returned to the shared workspace. What did you find? The two geniuses asked in unison. My first guess was probably wrong. The information in the simulated Aeons seems tied to the real Aeons, Eno said. Every time I modified the simulated Aha, something else interfered with my changes, as if someone ran higher priority code over mine. Code more advanced than Ms. Eno's, Screwlum concluded. Hypotheses 1 and 2 are invalid. The simulated universe has likely been interfered with by the Aeons themselves. Miss Herta, who had been visibly excited, burst out. Interference by the Aeons? Doesn't that validate my direction? Then, unexpectedly, Miss Herta went offline. The puppet that represented her looked like it had glitched. A moment later, the standby puppet began to speak again, sounding oddly reverent. Miss Herta, peerless in the world. Miss Herta, beauty that makes fish sink and geese fall. Miss Herta, supremely intelligent. Screwlum's tone held a note of wry amusement. She disconnected from excitement, apparently. To my knowledge, it continued, there is only one reason for Miss Herta to express this level of emotion. She believes her research has touched the edges of the unknown, and that one more step will expand her circle of knowledge. Circle of knowledge? We visualize a life form's knowledge as a circle. Inside the circle is the known, outside is the unknown. As a being learns, the circle grows. And Miss Herta's aim is to expand that circle for the entire universe. She wants to acquire new knowledge that's recorded nowhere else. Imagine all life can learn from one thin book. Miss Herta wants to make that book thicker. Her goal isn't to hand new knowledge to other scholars. She seeks the unknown for its own sake. Perhaps her purity of purpose is why she became an emissary of erudition. The emotions of organic beings are like tides, generating massive energy as they rise and fall. It is this tidal energy that drives Miss Herta. How many emissaries of erudition are there? Eno asked. Screwlum shook its head. Geniuses rarely communicate, so I don't know. Besides Miss Herta, the only one I'm sure of is 64, Dr. Primitive. Many of his studies would be considered evil by universal standards, but he can still be pure in his pursuit of knowledge. Eno remembered another common view of emissaries. People say emissaries are definitely strong. Non-emissaries aren't always weak, but emissaries have capabilities others don't. That's not wrong, Screwlum agreed. Emissaries follow a path farther than most pathstriders. Their upper limit of imaginary energy use simply exceeds what most can achieve. The puppet representing Miss Herta moved again, this time calmer. Speak, Eno. What do you want? If I can help, I will. If you haven't thought of it, come find me later. Eno scratched her head. There is something. After being looked upon by erudition, I feel like there's a huge reservoir of imaginary energy in me, but I can only access a fraction of it. You want me, an emissary of erudition, to have a solution? Miss Herta said. If even I can't solve it, perhaps no one in the universe can. Don't expect too much. Every pathstrider masters their path energy differently. You're a virus with independent thought. You probably handle path energy in ways universal rules don't cover. For most pathstriders of erudition, path energy is icing on the cake. My title, Genius Society member number 83, isn't useless, but it's also a bit ornamental. Still, when path energy reaches an emissary level, it becomes useful. Let's do a simple test. Wait, did you tamper with this data using your abilities? Eno shook her head obediently. No, the imaginary energy in you isn't merely abundant. If you released it all at once, the destruction could match an emissary's, Miss Herta warned. First, tell me what happened when the machine head looked at you. Eno told the truth. When it looked at me, my instinct of erosion made me touch its body. You actually touched the machine head's body? Miss Herta exclaimed. Yes, Eno said. It was less than a second before I returned to reality. Miss Herta put a hand to her forehead and sighed. All right. You certainly know how to bring me surprises. Nine didn't cry or make a fuss. After a while, Miss Herta sighed. It seems it was right not to have high hopes. Your situation now is beyond even my ability to fix. Find someone else. I still need to check on the guy with a Stellaron inside him. I'm leaving. Miss Herta disconnected from the puppet once more. Screwlum cocked his head. Eno, since we can't solve this here, why not go back to the source? Logic. Path energy is essentially imaginary internal energy, opposite of real internal energy. It springs from abstract concepts like ideals and beliefs. Conclusion. Theoretically, if you find an unwavering belief, you can tap more path energy. Right now, your reservoir is full, but the tap barely drips. I suggest carrying some devices that can be charged with imaginary energy so you can exert a greater effect. Screwlum produced a small circular disc from his body, no bigger than one of Miss Eno's finger joints, its face engraved with a strange pattern. Consider this a gift between friends. As monarch of Screwlum, I must also use valuable items to keep relations with you and the world of automatons smooth. Practically speaking, it's a defensive tool. Wear it on your chest like a medal. For you, it's simple. Inject imaginary energy into it in advance. When you need it, activate it, and it'll form an imaginary barrier in front of you. When the stored energy is exhausted, it shuts down automatically. It's not a miracle, but a full charge will block energy impacts below the emissary level for under 10 seconds, if you have no other defenses. And if you ever meet other residents or important partners of Screwlum, it will reduce a lot of unnecessary trouble. With the simulated universe matter settled, it's time for me to go. If you need anything else, contact me. Screwlum doffed his hat, bowed with exaggerated grace, and left Miss Herta's office. Scrulum is polite and considerate, isn't he? This world keeps getting more interesting. Miss Herda's tone was amused. But I still don't know what to do next. How about starting by helping those around you? When you entered the office earlier, it seemed someone outside was in trouble. Miss Eno stepped out. A middle-aged man stood before a portrait of Miss Herda, muttering and peering closely at the frame. Strange, it should be around here. Could it be hidden in Miss Herda's portrait? Noticing her approach, he straightened as if caught. If you need anything, please go to the front desk. Just, when he saw her properly, he swallowed the rest of the sentence. Are you in some trouble? Miss Eno, sorry to bother you. My name is Leonard. I'm the space station's cybersecurity engineer. He bowed solemnly. Thank you again for repairing the defense system during the Legion attack. If you hadn't, with a breach that big, Miss Herda or Station Master Asta might have held me responsible. I could have lost my job. He hurried on, embarrassed. I found something strange when the system went down. The Stellaron hunters also infiltrated the station. So, Silver Wolf hacked the space station system again? It was that genius from Punklord, but not quite a straight hack of the defense system. I was checking cybersecurity, trying to trace her, but she outmaneuvered me and turned my gear against me. She reverse-hacked my equipment, spammed people, and created a station-wide game that made everyone think Leonard caused the mess. He buried his face in his hands. Let's not dwell on it. It's settled now. I thought I'd be punished, but Miss Herda was merciful and let me continue investigating. I want to make the most of that chance to repair my reputation. Miss Eno pinched her lips. If I help you, will it interfere with your work? Leonard's face lit up. You'd help? Of course not. There's no problem. I want to start inside the space station, retrace the intruder's path, and look for clues I missed. Maybe I overlooked some blind spots. He produced what looked like a camera. This is a decoder. It masquerades as a camera, but it detects hidden traces. Let me show you. Leonard aimed the device at the wall. A faint smear appeared, like a drop of sweat. This is. Miss Eno stepped closer and placed her hand on the electronic graffiti. The image buckled inward, sound and color bent toward it. A Void Ranger erupted from the warped wall. Instinctively, Miss Eno activated the disc Scrulum had given her. The Void Ranger's attack smacked against an invisible air wall and did nothing. Miss Eno seized the creature. The erosion virus she carried invaded its form. The Void Ranger crumbled to ash, leaving only a shard of green matter, plundered instinct. To Leonard, it looked as if Miss Eno had instantly refined it. How did a Void Ranger end up here? Good thing you acted fast. This proves the graffiti is encrypted. Once decoded, it reveals hidden information. Yes, Leonard breathed. The data shows that when Silver Wolf first infiltrated the space station, she encountered Void Rangers. She set up a teleportation coordinate and sent them away. When I tried to decrypt this graffiti just now, I reactivated the coordinate, and that's why the Void Rangers popped back. Point-to-point teleportation with no power source, beacon teleportation achieved purely by calculation? No wonder they could strike the space station. With that ability, even Miss Herda's office isn't safe. You're right, Silver Wolf is currently in Miss Herda's office. To be precise, she's already hacked into the simulated universe. What? Leonard flinched. Miss Eno's face went calm and serious. Why choose the simulated universe of all places? Leave the rest to me. She returned to Miss Herda's office and dove into the simulated universe. It didn't take long to locate Silver Wolf. The hacker was rummaging through virtual shelves, searching for an ether cartridge when someone suddenly appeared beside her. Silver Wolf whirled. How did you find me so quickly and precisely? Even with a guide, I wouldn't be this fast in the simulated universe. In reality, your ability, ether editing, can directly affect the physical world. Mine can't. But inside data space, I can control program execution directly. How each piece of code runs isn't determined by the observed rules. It's determined by my personal subjective will. So, if you took an online exam, you could rewrite the question so any answer you wrote would be correct? Unless there's a stronger influence, like a star god, then yes. Miss Eno's silence implied acceptance. Silver Wolf smirked. 666. This input is the key. No extra salt needed. However deep your understanding or how well you play the game, you can't beat a cheat that directly alters ally and enemy stats and can't be banned by the developers. From the start, I had no chance. So, as the winner of this game, what will you do to me now? She teased. Abandon the simulated universe like it's a black box. Collude with the company for an intergalactic takedown. None of that. Miss Herta owns the space station. Before I entered the simulated universe, I contacted her. She told you to leave. Leave? Why? Aren't you going to arrest me, put me in shackles, exile me to some distant rock? I'm only responsible for solving Leonard's problem. I don't involve myself in other matters. Then I might attack the space station again, you know. If I'm still here, I'll repeat what I did earlier. Boring. Silverwolf's smirk faltered. By the way, Miss Herta said as punishment she reverse-hacked all your interstellar accounts. The company will freeze every one of them. What? Silverwolf's composure snapped. She immediately exited the simulated universe. Outside Miss Herta's office, Leonard's exhaustion evaporated. He laughed in disbelief. So Miss Herta had me continue investigating just to lure the snake out of its hole. I never imagined she knew about the remaining hacker traps on the station. Probably, Miss Eno said. Miss Eno, thank you so much. If I'd resisted her, I'd still be in trouble. Now, I'm not going to be fired. Though I know opportunities like this are rare, if you remember my name in the future, don't hesitate to ask. Miss Eno nodded and stepped away. See, helping others always gets good reviews, she murmured. Miss Eno's mood is written all over her face. I told you, a beautiful girl like Miss Eno looks even better when she smiles. Far away in the depths of the universe, Silverwolf raged alone. It's all gone, completely gone, not a single bit left. This is too much. Kafka watched her stamp and beat her chest and shook his head. All right, stop crying and making a scene. You're not a child. I'm not crying and making a scene, yes. So what's the plan? Hack a local branch and get your accounts back? Sigh. 1 or 2 might have been recoverable, but I went too big. They're all gone. A branch won't cut it. I'll have to go to Pierpoint. That's company headquarters. Are you going alone? Just me. What? You want to come? That won't work. Did you forget? I'm in Elio's next script. I need to be ready. Oh, right. That story doesn't suit me. You guys go on without me, and I wish you a good time at Pierpoint. After indirectly setting off the genius hacker from Punklord, Miss Eno stayed on the space station for dozens more days, lending her expertise to anyone who needed it, just as she had helped Leonard. At first, she worried that her public interactions with Alicia might look odd, but she quickly realized she had overthought it. She was a genius. Many of her actions required no explanation. When she muttered to herself in public, people assumed she was deep in thought and that some technological leap might follow the next day. After the Legion's attack, every department was overwhelmed, and her timely help earned her a sterling reputation. Coupled with the space station staff's near-religious faith in geniuses, Miss Eno soon discovered she had become, for most people there, the second most important person, second only to Miss Herta. Miss Eno is not only beautiful, but inwardly beautiful as well. Unlike Miss Herta, who seems aloof but is actually tsundere, Miss Eno is much more approachable. Miss Eno had just stepped out of the master control zone when she overheard staff exchanging exactly that sort of praise. The first half delighted her. Alicia's appearance was incontestably the most beautiful in her view, and Miss Eno herself, an almost identical copy in everything but color, naturally came second. Praise for her inner self matching her outward beauty ranked in her mind as the highest possible compliment. But the second half left her momentarily speechless. Aloof? Tsundere? Is that Miss Herta's persona? She thought. She didn't fully understand Miss Herta, but the staff's faces told her the truth. Miss Herta hadn't been playing at coldness. She was simply uninterested in them, judging them unworthy of her time. Compared even to Dr. Primitive, another erudition emissary, Miss Herta was almost saintly in her indifference. The Tsundere label, the staff assumed, came from Herta's willingness to let people peruse her research manuscripts. To ordinary staff, a genius's drafts were valuable weapons of knowledge. In reality, the manuscripts Herta casually left around were already worthless to her. Whether they were in someone's hands or in the trash made no difference to her. Lately, several of the Nameless from the Astral Express had been frequent visitors, bound to the space station by errands and commissions. The Star Dome Essence, born on the station, had been testing a simulated universe in Miss Herta's office for 2 days. Miss Eno and Herta got along well enough, and Eno had discovered interesting quirks in the simulation, but she never became Herta's fourth partner. The reasons were practical. Miss Eno's curiosity centered not on aeons themselves, but on the paths they represented. How different pathstriders derived imaginary energy from abstract concepts. She wanted to know whether the differences between paths could be expressed concretely, and how to distinguish an architect from a masked fool when a pathstrider had not publicly declared a path. That line of inquiry wasn't one of Herta's 800-plus specialties, and compared to aeons, Herta showed little interest. So although Herta let her into the simulation freely, their relationship never advanced to full collaboration. There was also the simple fact that Miss Eno had a lot to learn about game design. Herta once invited her to help shape the simulated universe. Writing curios and events posed no intellectual challenge for Eno, but she had a terrible sense of balance. One of her curios was pure practicality, number 85, a small item created by Miss Eno to help others clear levels. It has no elaborate backstory and no ornate decoration, but it is very effective. Guaranteed victory. Effect: upon entering combat, you are considered to have every blessing from every path. And one of her events read like this: you meet this genius. She appears shy and awkward in social situations, preferring deeds to words. Instead of making grand promises, she helps you with practical actions. Option 1. Eliminate bad luck. Remove all negative curios. For each negative curio removed, gain 100 cosmic fragments. Option 2. Gain good luck. Obtain all 3-star curios, including Rupert's differential engine. Her lack of restraint and game balance cost her the privilege to write curios and events freely in the simulated universe. Her other experiments, modifying her own simulated identity to attract the attention of aeons, were hit and miss. She once assumed the identity of an architect and pumped up her preservation value, but no simulated Clypoth glanced her way. It seemed he saw through her disguise. She had to admit she still had much to learn. She thought about that as she walked into Herta's curio storage room. For Herta, collecting curios was one of the station's greatest treasures. A display case contained a rating gun that opened its half-closed mechanical eyes and rolled them toward her as she entered, as if scrutinizing her. Then it announced in a flat tone, unable to rate. Miss Eno had no idea what criteria the device used or why she had been unrateable. On her way out, she received a message from Asta. Is the company's efficiency really that fast? Back in the master control zone, 2 staff members carried an exquisitely crafted rectangular box to her. With a few taps, she used a small erosion virus to bypass its complex password. The lid slid open to reveal a lance with a pure white exterior and a black core. Its surface patterns were almost identical to the abyss white flower. Alicia was uncharacteristically stunned. From appearance alone, the lance looked more than 90% like the abyss white flower's design. Not only is the speed impressive, she said quietly, but restoring it to this level from a verbal description, these days, perhaps only Vilvi could do that. Eno's request had been, by the standards of other geniuses, unusually ordinary. After she confirmed the weapon's form and function, Pierpoint had thrown the station's best resources at it, and in fewer than 10 system days, the lance had been manufactured on the universe's strongest industrial lines. Ms. Eno stared at it for a long moment. The staff standing nearby watched awkwardly, uncertain whether she was pleased or not. Asta, seeing no sign that Eno wished to return it for remanufacture, dismissed them. When Miss Eno picked up the lance, she felt her path energy flowing into it, steady and familiar. As if completing a master recognition ritual, a thought was enough to send it vanishing into thin air, and another to have it reappear in her hand. Like Dan Heng conjuring Cloud Piercer, or March 7th making her bow and arrow disappear at will, Pathstriders who met certain conditions possessed a kind of extra-dimensional pocket. They could pull items from nowhere that could not possibly have been concealed on their persons. Pathstriders were extraordinary. Ms. Eno smiled to herself and tested the lance once more, savoring the ease with which she summoned and dismissed it.